There were 10 packets. Anybody?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Virginia Hart of the Shelton Planning and Zoning Commission. Today is Wednesday, September 18th, and the special meeting of the Shelton Planning and Zoning Commission is hereby called to order at 6:03 p.m. This meeting is being conducted in Shelton City Hall and via Zoom, and it's also being carried live on YouTube. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll start off with a roll call of the commission. Please verbally indicate that you are here when your name is called. Commissioner Kelly?
Present.
Commissioner Parkins? Participating remotely. I'll go on. Commissioner Cristiano?
Present.
Commissioner Tiki?
Present.
Commissioner Amato?
Here.
Alternate Commissioner McGee?
Present.
Myself, Commissioner Harger. Commissioner Parkins?
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Castro, our Assistant Administrator.
Present.
Attorney Francis Teodoso, our Corporation Counsel.
Present.
Ms. Renazos, our Recording Secretary.
Present.
Ms. Charbonneau, our Stenographer.
Present.
And Ms. Guzman, our P&Z Clerk. A couple of points before continuing with this evening's meeting. Ms. Castro will act as the Zoom meeting host along with Ms. Bisman. While commissioners will be able to make comments throughout the meeting, the chair asks that you please identify yourself and wait to be recognized by myself before speaking to make sure we are not all speaking over each other and to make sure our recording secretary is clear as to who is speaking. First agenda item is old business, and the first item is application 2414, Dominic Thomas for 740 River Road. Attorney Teodoso, the resolution is going to be taken care of next week. That's the 40 side-by-side apartments.
Yeah.
Okay, so that agenda item will be taken care of next week. Is there a motion to table?
I'll make the
motion.
Okay, motion to table, agenda item made by Commissioner Kelly, seconded by
I'll second.
Commissioner Amato. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion to table application 2412 passed unanimously on a 6-0 vote, and let the record show that there are no commissioners that abstained and no commissioners voted nay. Next is application 2414, Dominic Thomas for Fountain Square LLC at 801 Bridgeport Avenue, Sessions map 28, lot 18, for a major modification to a PDD, initial concept development plans, and amendment to the statement of uses and standards. Removal of the proposed office building and hotel, replacing it with a 13,800 more or less square foot specialty grocery store. All right, this application had a public hearing on August 14th, after which the commission discussed the application on August 28th and came to a consensus for staff to prepare an unfavorable resolution. And I recognize Attorney Francis Teodoso, Corporation Counsel, to present the resolution.
Resolution for application 2414, applicants Fountain Square LLC and FS Square Shelton LLC by the Shelton Planning and Zoning Commission. On July 2nd, 2024, the applicants Fountain Square LLC and FS Shelton LLC, acting by and through their attorney Dominic Thomas, petitioned this commission to consider 1, a Fourth Amendment of Statement of Uses and Standards, SUS, and 2, a major modification of the Plan Development District. Both items pertain to PDD number 91. Fourth Amendment sought inter alia to modify Section 5 of the Statements of Uses by inserting language which would allow residential rental apartments. The major modification requested changes to the earlier approved initial concept development plan, in particular the site plan, by both the removal of the proposed office building and hotel, replacing it with a 13,800 square foot specialty grocery store and a 100 unit residential apartment building. See record 1. The commission accepted the petition for review on July 10th, 2024. Under section 3414 of the Shelton Planning and Zoning Regulations, the commission has the requisite authority to consider such changes. The commission must include a public hearing as part of its deliberative process. However, the commission is not required to make such changes. The commission may, in its discretionary capacity, approve, disapprove, or give approval with modifications to the proposal. At various dates while their application 2414 was before the commission, the applicants submitted the following record. I'm not going to read the record. I'll submit it as a document, but it has 15 items and it's been assembled by the Planning and Zoning Commission. It spans the date of 7/2/24 to the rendering packet of 8/12/24. At the public hearing on August 14th, the applicants clarified the Fourth Amendment, and the major modification included restating the continuation of a sidewalk all the way up Parrott Drive. Their engineer noted that the grocery store had assigned to it 125 parking spaces and that the store entrance was at the corner of Parrott Drive. As to the 100-unit apartment building, he explained that 61 parking spaces were located underneath the building itself and the remainder were situated around the building. Total parking spaces for the building were noted to be 158. Finally, the applicant's engineer detailed the building would have 16 studio units, 48 one-bedroom units, and 36 two-bedroom units. Section 33.68 contains the Shelton Planning and Zoning Regulations as to parking requirements, which generally require 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit. By submission of a traffic letter, the applicants noted how and when the traffic generation would change. The combined effect of the market/apartment unit combination would raise trips to 159 trips during a typical afternoon peak hour and to 175 trips during a Saturday peak hour. During the public portion of the hearing, John Anglace, president of the Shelton Board of Aldermen, questioned the compatibility of a store and an apartment on the site. Thereafter, the commission voted to close the public hearing. During general deliberations, the consensus of the commission was that the tandem application of both the 100-unit apartment and the grocery store presented an extremely congested parking situation with parking ratios on the upper pad much different than the remainder of Fountain Square. One commissioner suggested a 25% reduction in the apartments. Commissioners opined that the dense parking would create both traffic and pedestrian congestion and safety issues specific to the upper pad. Of particular concern was the incorporation of city school bus stops into a layout. A commissioner noted that there was no area near the grocery store nor on Bridgeport Avenue that could accommodate such school bus stops. The chair and Commissioner Parkins suggested as an alternative to the tandem application that the grocery store be approved only. Therefore, based on its proposal, its knowledge of the site and the general area, and subject to the considerations outlined in the above report, it's your call from here.
Okay. I'd like to ask for a motion for discussion.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
there's a motion for discussion from Commissioner Ticky and seconded by Commissioner Kelly. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Let the record show that the motion for discussion was approved by a vote 6-0. No commissioner voted nay or abstained. Or is it for discussion?
I would just comment that this commission's worked for a very long time on this proposal and designed it, and with the layout in mind, that was not for apartments. And the Planning and Zoning Commission, part of that is planning. So we thought of a plan. It was a good plan. That's what we passed. That's what we approved. And I agree with the major deviation of adding apartments to this, which was never a part of the original plan, does that to traffic and safety concerns. So I agree with the resolution.
Mhm. Any other commissioners like to comment? All right, is there a motion on the resolution, which is to deny the major modification to the PDD, initial concept development plans, and amendment to the statement of use standards, which includes the removal of the previously approved office building and hotel, replacing it with a 13,800 more or less square foot specialty grocery store and 100-unit residential apartment?
Commissioner Cristiano, I'd like to make that motion.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I talk to you?
The commission stands in recess at 6:14. Okay. All right, the commission has reconvened, and Commissioner Cristiano, I'm going to ask you to rescind that particular motion, because we do need to bring forward the rest of the resolution that Attorney Teodoso put together for us, and it is that we would, secondly, modify and approve the major modification to the initial concept development plan of PDD number 91 by removing from the site plan the proposed office building and hotel and replacing it with only 13,000 more or less square foot specialty grocery store. So does everybody in the commission understand? It would be one motion for denying, but just separating out that only the 13,000 specialty grocery store would be approved. Okay,
How do you want that?
So under one motion, we're going to approve both?
Attorney Teodoso?
Is that what's being recommended?
Yeah, Attorney Teodoso is going to comment.
You have before you two requests from the applicant. One of them is to change the statement of uses. The change in the statement of uses was to allow apartments. You're going to deny the statement of uses if that's your choice. The second part was a major modification to the site plan specifically, allowing a removal of the hotel and the offices, and substituting in its place the apartment units and the grocery store. You're going to partially deny that, but approve the replacement of the two things that are removed with the grocery store. And the resolutions there are printed in that fashion because that's what the commission requested.
Okay. So Attorney Teodoso, we accept and second just one motion.
Yes, if it's easier, I can read the motion if I get somebody to make the motion and second the motion. Would you like me to do that?
Sure.
All right. With regard to the first, therefore, based on its review of the proposal, its knowledge of the site, its general area, and subject to the consideration outlined in the above report, it was first moved by Commissioner Cristiano and seconded by Commissioner Kelly to deny the petition for a Fourth Amendment to the statement and uses and standards for PDD number 91. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, would you roll call Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Parkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Moto,
Aye.
Commissioner Cristiano,
Aye.
Commissioner Tiki,
Aye.
and chair votes aye, motion is passed by a vote of 6-0.
All right, so for the commission's edification, what you've just done is denied the application to include the apartments in the statement of uses.
Mhm.
Okay.
I think we're all clear on it. We just don't know how to word it
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
One comes
We don't
first.
tend to do that.
yeah.
All right,
So Attorney Tedros is going to continue.
okay. It was then moved by Commissioner
This would be a new.
Cristiano again.
Cristiano and
Parkins.
second Commissioner Parkins to modify and approve a major modification to the initial concept development plan of PDD number 91 by removing from the site plan the proposed office building and hotel and replacing it with only the 13,800 square foot specialty grocery store. There,
Need a roll call.
Okay, yes, I will do another roll call. Commissioner Moto,
Aye.
Commissioner Cristiano,
Aye.
Commissioner Tiki,
Aye.
Commissioner Parkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Motion has passed by a vote of 6-0. Thank you. That settles and ends that particular application. So moving on to our next agenda item is a public hearing, and I want to share the protocol we'll be following. Ms. Castro will indicate if any written comments were received from members of the public no later than 24 hours before the start of this evening's meeting. If written comments were received, they will be read into the record. The applicant and/or its associates will make their presentation. The commission can ask questions during the presentation or at its conclusion. The applicant and our associates can answer the commission's questions at the time they are presented or at the conclusion of the presentation. At the point in the public hearing, when the chair asks for public comment, we will begin with elected officials of the city present in the auditorium, followed by elected officials participating via Zoom or through a phone link. After elected officials conclude their comments, members of the public will be recognized, starting with those present in the auditorium, followed by those participating remotely via Zoom or through the phone link. Those in the auditorium will need to list their name on a speaker sheet, which is on a table at the entrance to the auditorium. Those participating via Zoom will need to use Zoom's raise your hand feature. Those participating via phone will need to use dial *9 to be recognized. After you are recognized, please state and spell your name and state your address to assist the recording secretary and stenographer when doing the minutes and transcript of the public hearing. Each speaker has 5 minutes to present comments, which should address specific criteria of the zoning regulations, the merits of the application, and be new information, not a repeat of comments presented by a previous speaker. Comments and questions should be directed to the commission, not to the applicant and/or his associates. Members of the public are expected to practice appropriate etiquette by being quiet, observant, and respectful. Disruptive attendees may be removed from verbally participating. The applicant's attorney and/or associates will be given the opportunity to address any comments or questions from the public after the last person from the public has been given the opportunity to speak. If the commission feels further information is needed from the applicant, the chair will ask for a motion to continue the public hearing. The public hearing remains open. The commission is not allowed to make any public comment, discuss any part of the applicant's and/or his associate's presentation, or receive any additional information from anyone. If the commission feels the applicant and/or his associates have answered all questions and have addressed all concerns from the commission and/or public hearing will close. The commission reserves the right to discuss the application at the close of the public hearing or to schedule a discussion at an upcoming commission meeting. At either time, the commission will be asked by the chair on how it wants to proceed. So this is the opening of the public hearing for application 2420. Dominic Thomas for Crown Point 2 LLC at 0 Bridgeport Avenue and 48 Long Hill Crossroads. Assessors map 50, lots 15 and 16 in an LIP zone for a planned development district zone for a mixed-use commercial development to include a hotel, restaurant, groceries, and retail. Commissioner Romano, would you please read the public hearing notice?
Sure. Shelton Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Shelton, Connecticut hereby gives notice of a public hearing to be held on Wednesday, September 18th, 2024 at 6 p.m. in person at Shelton City Hall and via Zoom to consider the following. Initiation of application 24-20, Dominic Thomas for Crown Point Associates of Shelton 2 LLC at 0 Bridgeport Avenue and 48 Long Hill Crossroads, Assessors Map 50, lots 15 and 16, for a planned development district to include a hotel, restaurants, retail, and grocery store. Plans titled Initial Concept Development Plans, Assessors Map 50, Parcel 15, Bridgeport Avenue, and Assessors Map 50, Parcel 16, 48 Long Hill Crossroad, Shelton, Connecticut. Dominic Thomas, trustee, dated 5/1/2024 and revised to 7/2/2024, were prepared by Rhodes Tizo and Company LLC. Property is generally bound as follows: northerly by 514 Bridgeport Avenue, easterly by Hawks Ridge Drive, southerly by 600 to 614 Bridgeport Avenue, and westerly by 0 Bridgeport Avenue, aka Assessors Map 50, Lot 9.
Thank you, Commissioner Romano. This application was accepted for review on July 10th, posted to the city's website prior to the opening of the public hearing. Was the following: the application for a PDD zone, the original and revised statement of uses and standards, site plans and architectural plans for each building, renderings, a GIS map of the parcel, a copy of the decision in 2772 BPR LLC versus Planning and Zoning Commission of North Branford, a traffic report, stormwater drainage report, a memo from staff regarding tree clearing, and the recording of the deed, transferring ownership to the applicant, a letter from the applicant's attorney consenting to a 17-day extension to commence the public hearing, 2 letters from the Shelton Conservation Commission, and individual letters from the attorney representing residents at Hawks Ridge, soil scientist, traffic engineer, 9 residents, and 1 cosign by Alderman Inglis, McPherson, and Bellinacci, signposting photos, and a certificate of mailing. Ms. Castro, were any other reports, materials, or correspondence received within the time period for this application, but not yet posted to the city's website that we need to acknowledge for the record?
No, I did receive some items today, but not within the time period.
Okay, thank you. So I understand the applicant is present. Please identify yourself for the record and have the floor.
Thank you. Is this working?
Yes,
Yeah, the button's up. It's
yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Attorney Dominic Thomas, Cohen and Thomas, 315 Main Street, Derby, Connecticut, representing the applicant. As you noted in your introduction, the notice, the copy of the certificate of mailing with the notices and the signposting photos, which we did post on both Bridgeport Avenue and on Long Hill Crossroad, were uploaded to the Google Drive. And as you also identified, there was a great volume of material, and given the fact of the material that's come in recently that we've submitted and that the public has submitted, stating right at the very beginning that it's my understanding and hope and request that the hearing will be kept open as we go through this due to the volume of it. I have communicated with Attorney McCann, and I met with couple of members of Hawks Ridge, and while I don't think what we've addressed was to their satisfaction, we did attempt to address some of their concerns. Some of their objections to this property were the fact, actually there was some understanding that the entrances would be off Long Hill Crossroad. The construction entrance, the existing entrances are off Long Hill Crossroads. As you can see from the plan, the entrances to the developed site are off of Bridgeport Avenue. And they are over, it's not working. Yeah. And they are over, oh, that's better. Wells Hollow Brook, which, as I will refer to later, is basically the drainage ditch for Bridgeport Avenue. And if you look at the map carefully, you will see that Wells Hollow Brook is in excess of 85% in the state right of way. I will state for the record and talk about this later briefly, that I have already communicated and have made application through DOT rights of way and have been in communication with them. At present, the initial reports from some of the departments have been not to sell the property to the applicant, which doesn't affect our bridging of it, but it will necessitate that if they don't sell it, we will have to talk to them about the improvements that the client wants to make to Wells Hollow Brook. We have, with respect to making construction entrances off of Bridgeport Avenue, obviously we can't wait until those approvals go through OSTA. This is, as you will hear from David Sullivan, this is an OSTA project. We did submit an application, a revised set of plans that showed a substantial evergreen buffer along Bridgeport Avenue, despite the enormous change in elevation. And
Are you sure you meant Bridgeport Avenue? Along the cross-
Long Hill Crossroads, I'm sorry, along Long Hill Crossroads, along Long Hill Crossroads. And we also included, whether offered to them, and it's part of the plan that was given to them, sections from the two houses at the end of Wellsview down to the two restaurants that are at the end of the proposal, the Long Hill Crossroads end of the proposal. And I think the commission can also take into account its own knowledge of the forested area between Honeysell, Long Hill Crossroad, and those two buildings. I would like to start briefly with the statement of the three aldermen that they made, referring to when Hawks Ridge was approved. When Hawks Ridge was approved, another attorney was making the presentation. I was, as the representative of the Wells family, I was consulting with him at the time. And as stated by the alderman, the mayor opposed Hawks Ridge. Why? Because he wanted to keep it LIP. And in my conversations with him, I will tell you, he was hoping to scarf the steel chainsaw people from going to Oxford to go to Shelton. Instead, 125,000 square foot warehouse. However, and I will state this, I said to him right away, please do the numbers, Mr. Mayor, and you'll find out that Hawks Ridge generates 6 times the amount of taxes that the steel factory would. But it was, what happened there? Well, it had to be a PDD, and it was a planned development district that was ended off being in 3 parts, and the upper area was where the single family homes and the attached units existed. And then people at Hawks Ridge at that point objected to the 2016-2017 application, which was somewhat similar to this, made by the same developer who was a contract purchaser, but included apartments on the upper level. And I will refer to upper level, lower level, which is significant in this development, because in 1975, the city of Shelton put a main sewer line connecting the 2 pump stations, the one on Beard Sawmill and the one in front of Crown Point that has the nicest pump station building probably in the country. And it connected that and split the farm property. And it created a development issue. And as you know, I usually don't pull any punches, and I'm not going to hear my unvarnished opinion of what the opponents want. It's for this property to stay LIP and not be developed, just to stay as is. Because as the arguments were made then, LIP, it's not in any way, shape, or form that manufacturing is not going to move to Shelton. That's ridiculous. This is a desirable place to go. But as was presented way back then, the square footage the cost per square foot to renovate many of the existing industrial buildings is substantially less than buying one, building one. So that is a factor when you're looking at empty property. I have often told clients, when you come to me with a project, try to bring me a contaminated piece of property full of broken asphalt, because it's a lot easier to talk about than it is something that's undeveloped. But this is zoned for LIP. And we need to look at that from the beginning. And so I assume I could screen share,
Yes.
hopefully. And hopefully I can find what I'm looking for. So what I did is I have a couple of quick exhibits to go over before we turn it over to the experts. And one of them is there's a reference to the POCD. So I want to point that out and clarify, because it was interesting. This is the legend of the future land use plan that is in the POCD of 2006, which was not really updated in the 2017 update. Second page of this is a blow up of the future land use plan. And as you see, as you see here, the black dots mean future plan of economic development area. Okay? Purple means office and light industrial. So when you look at the future land use plan and you look at the black dots, that is an area that there may be a future economic development area. So what you have is, what you have is the fact that in the future land use plan, lo and behold, the property that is now in litigation and was the town center at Shelter Ridge, the big PDD, and the property that is now Hawks Ridge, and the property that is now before you is all black dotted. It was all designated at that point as being a future economic development area. Now, if the intention was economic development only LIP, they would have certainly not put the black dots on. And in fact, the property across the street was approved, although it's in litigation, for a multifaceted commercial and residential development. And of course, we know that the property on the other side of Long Hill Crossroad was approved as Hawks Ridge, which is a substantial economic development project. And we are before you to propose a PDD as a substantial economic development project. Now, we need to begin with what it's zoned for. It's zoned for LIP and light industrial. And in the LIP, wrong thing. In the LIP, this is Dominic's amateurish effort at engineering two light industrial buildings onto the property in question. And what I did, just so you know, is what I did was I tried to mirror the industrial building next to up Long Hill Crossroads that's owned by Bob Cinto. Basically mirror it. And Honeysell, which is down the bottom. So you can see very comfortable, this property can be divided into two light industrial buildings, okay? What are some of the, now there are a lot of special exception uses, but what are some of the site plan uses as of right? Laundry, cleaning, and dyeing plants. Motor vehicle and truck repairs when accessory to a permitted use. Freight and materials trucking when accessory to permitted use. And the most significant one, which is manufacturing, processing, and assembly of goods. And when you have a manufacturing facility, it can have the trucking facility, and it can have the other accessory use of freight, a trucking facility and repairs for the trucking facility.
Excuse me, Attorney Thomas, could you just clarify where you're reading that from?
I took
Zoning
that
regs?
from your Schedule A.
Schedule A, the zoning regs.
Yeah, right, Schedule A of the zoning regs. Now, you also added warehouse. That is in LIP, but that's by special exception. But this property could be subject by special exception to one of the things that people are building, which is high-tech, high bay warehousing for supplies. But I'm not even going there because I'm just focusing on site plans for one specific reason, which is people are saying, well, why the heck did he put the BPR suit in? Put the BPR suit in because this was a very controversial case in North Branford that involved a propane storage area. And the people objected to it, and they raised a lot of issues about the neighborhood, about the traffic in the neighborhood, and about the land values. And it was approved because the commission had made it site plan, which meant it was a matter of right as long as it complied. So what I call your attention, and I'm going to quickly go through it, that the language in the head notes of this case are very enlightening. When reviewing a site plan development application for a period is as of right. The planning commission acts as an administrative agency. When a planning commission undertakes consideration of a site plan application, it has no independent discretion beyond determining whether the plan complies with the site plan regulations. And then it says the town commission, when it's unable to deny it, because it was the claims of traffic, the claims of the impact on the neighborhoods, because when the Planning and Zoning Commission made it a site plan as a matter of right, it was a determination that the infrastructure in the area and the use is appropriate. There's no discretion. The only thing that a commission can do in a site plan situation like that is address issues along the boundary. In other words, move a driveway here or move a driveway here along the boundary. Can't be affected of what's across the street, okay? And are we being disconnected already? I hope not. No, I was. Am I still? I'm still up there. And so I wanted to point that out, and I highlighted the language that you should read because it says it's a conclusive presumption that, and we lost that. It's a conclusive presumption for zoning regulations to include that traffic, municipal services, and everything are in harmony with the district. And that's important to remember when you're considering this. And now I think I have to reconnect. I'm gonna have to, I chose to go on my hotspot, so. Yeah, well, I was told they fixed the thing, but somehow my hotspot got disconnected. Should I try Shelton Guest? Why don't I try Shelton Guest? Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, join. I think I okay. All right, so my apologies for the service in here, I guess isn't appropriate. So anyway, I have established the baseline. We talked about the POCD and issues which were brought up in Attorney McCann's letter. The other thing I did, and I want to address this, you will see it when we talk about the plans and the engineering. I filed the application with the PDD over the entire 15 acres, 15 plus acres. After conversations with and looking at some of the residents' comments and remembering what happened in 2016 and 17. And the concern that some expressed, of course, when you put a PDD over the upper area with nothing there, those uses are in the upper area. So I filed an amended PDD which goes only to the retaining wall, leaving the offer for this commission to accept, to look at that alternative, leaving the upper area beyond the retaining wall as LIP. Now, you could look at it both ways, as good or bad, because it is LIP. So you could have an LIP building, you could have a small building up there. So in fact, the uses that are in there, and just in case anybody was afraid there'd be a big restaurant across, you know what I mean, or another hotel or something like that, I chose to give that option of going only to the retaining wall and leaving the upper area where the client has to move the sewer line, and leaving the upper area as LIP. And it was something I did because of looking at my notes actually from 2016, 17, and being there's some concerns. There have been issues raised about wetlands and DOT. I think I covered them. We have to go, this is concept plans. We have to go to wetlands next. And we're working on the plan for wetlands next. We are communicating with DOT. You will hear a little more from Dave Sullivan about it. And I'm going to, at this point, turn it over to, speaking of Dave Sullivan, I'll address a parking issue later because Dave has to go to Newtown after 10. So with that, if you can defer any questions for me, because I want to make sure Dave gets out of here on time, I would like to turn it over to Dave Sullivan to review the traffic report that was submitted.
Do I need a,
Microphone.
Can you talk?
Here, this, you can do this one right here.
does this work?
Oh, no, that one doesn't work.
You just tapped
Just pull
it.
it closer to yourself.
Yeah, maybe if you pull it closer.
How's that?
Yeah.
That's good.
Good evening. Again, my name is David Sullivan. I'm with SLR Consulting, and I'm a traffic engineer, registered in Connecticut, licensed in Connecticut, and I manage the traffic planning, transportation planning, and mobility group at SLR. Dominic will be putting up a short PowerPoint
Okay. Well, let me try to get it
eventually, but I can get started anyway because much of this doesn't need to be visual. So our traffic study, we were asked to evaluate the commercial development, as you all know. And our traffic study essentially includes reviewing what's out there today or existing conditions, estimating.
I think I got it.
Oh, great. If you go to the first slide. There we go. Scope of study, estimating what the future conditions will be, assuming the development comes to fruition. We review the site access, we evaluate sight lines and geometry and things of that nature. And then we do our traditional, what's called the impact analysis, which has to do with comparing operations with and without the development in place. And then we develop a series of recommendations. On the map to the right, probably the most important thing on that map is all those blue dots are our study area. So essentially, you can see the site location in the green star approximately in the middle of those dots. But our study area included all of the signalized intersections between what was exit 12 and 13 is now exit 9 and 11. The old Stratford Road interchange up to Bridgeport Avenue, all the way along Bridgeport Avenue. And so we got to Constitution Boulevard and the interchange 11 at that location. So a substantial study area, but again, the important thing is that this study area also meets the criteria that we'll have to follow when we submit this to the Office of State Traffic Administration. They have certain guidelines that we follow. So that's the key elements in that particular slide. If you go to the next. The next one, the next slide Dominic, if you can get to it, gives an idea of what the traffic generation will be. Next slide.
On my screen.
There we
Oh,
go.
there it is.
Great. All right, this just gives us a feeling for what the traffic volumes are that we could anticipate here. So the first things we did, and there's a lot of numbers up here, but essentially we took each of the land uses individually. We used the Institute of Transportation Engineers statistics for each of the land use. We add up all of those land uses, and for the commercial land uses, we take an internal capture, and that just means somebody that's going to the restaurant might already be at the hotel, for example. And that's a small decrease in the traffic volumes. And then a larger decrease is the pass-by trips. The pass-by trips are, for instance, if you're on your way home from work and you stop into the supermarket and then you continue on your way home. So that is a new trip to that particular driveway coming in and out of the supermarket, but it's not a new trip at the other intersections because you would be going through those intersections in any case. So we make the adjustment for the pass-by trips. The hotel doesn't have the pass-by component, so we did that individually. But at the end of the day, we're estimating that there'll be 617 trips on an afternoon peak hour. That's in and out, approximately half and half. And likewise, about half and half, but on Saturdays during the midday peak hour, early afternoon, we expect that number would be higher, about 770 trips. That's our total net new trips that would need to be accommodated in the area roadways.
Mr. Sullivan? Mr. Sullivan, could you just clarify, why do you use that Institute of Transportation Engineers material?
That's the industry standard, and consultants from all over the country, including Connecticut, provide statistics for these different land uses that have already been built.
Mhm.
So we have a statistical basis to say that, okay, there's been 50 or 100 fast food restaurants, and those fast food restaurants have been counted, and the traffic is related to things like, does it have a drive-through? Does it not have a drive-through? What's the square footage? What's the number of employees? So that they break it down different ways. And that gives us a reliable basis to estimate what is the likely generation of these different uses.
Okay, and that takes into effect the area of the country that you're talking about, seasons and all that kind of stuff.
Generally it does.
Mhm.
Will there be 617 trips every afternoon? No, of course not. And many times we would round all of these numbers just so we didn't give the impression that we're that good and we know it will be exactly 617. But we know the information in this part of the country. We've done follow-up studies, and generally we're a little bit high. We just finished a study for a residential project, a follow-up study in Stanford, for example, and we were about 20% high in our estimates.
Mhm.
They required that follow-up study.
Okay, so this is a document or a manual that you refer to that gives research information and that way you're not going out there with somebody sitting in a lawn chair and deciding, clicking and guesstimating kind of stuff. This is based on a number of years of traffic studies.
Yes, but we do use the clickers too.
Okay.
So I'll get to that in a second.
So you overestimated.
We overestimated
By
in
20%.
Stanford, and that's generally that's how it goes. For instance, in Stanford, we use DOTs. This particular site was very close to the train station, and we know from other things that we've done that if we use the DOT's parameters, which is ITE plus a 20%, the 20% probably is not enough. And that's what we found out, that it probably should have been 30% or so in that particular case. But for the most part, you know, the whole industry is very comfortable with these uses or this process. The clickers. So the traffic data and all those blue dots that I pointed to, those are in our study area. We count traffic on the ramps. We counted traffic at Bridgeport Avenue, at Commerce and Old Stratford, and each of those other intersections. We actually count traffic at those locations. That data is correlated, and we have the benefit of the Bureau of Policy and Planning for much of the data to look at it. They give us suggestions on balancing, which we did. Some of the data that we're using has already been approved by DOT for the Fountain Square work we're doing. Likewise, for the McDonald's at Platte Road. And then we filled in the other intersections with new counts. And then we look at the counts that have already been approved, and we make sure we're balancing and we didn't get an unusual day when there was something blocking traffic somewhere and all the counts were low. So that we do use the clicker data, so to speak. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'll jump to the findings and the recommendations. So in general, what we do is we determine in some future year, in this particular case, we assumed, I believe, 2026 or 2025 as our opening year. And we bring the what we call the background traffic, which adds other traffic than our existing counts, and it adds on top of it, for example, in this case, the traffic for Fountain Square that's still to come, and the traffic for McDonald's that is still to come. Plus, we put a growth rate on it, and that's in consultation with the Bureau of Policy and Planning again at DOT. And then we come up with this scenario that if this site remains vacant, this is going to be the traffic and this is the conditions that you would expect on Bridgeport Avenue at all our study intersections. We then take those estimates I showed in the last slide, and we determine where those people are coming and going from. And we put those on those intersections based on their routing. For example, if 20% are coming from the north and 15% of them would benefit from using Route 8, and the other 5% would benefit from using Bridgeport Avenue. We make those assignments, we call them. So we take a distribution, we have our site estimates, and we have our assignment. So we take those assigned traffic volumes, which is at each of those intersections, how many people are going straight, right, and left. And then we add them on top of the background traffic volumes. And we call that the build or the combined traffic volumes. We then take all of that data, we put it into our model. The model is based on the programming data of all these signals. They're all, in this particular case, all those signals are state highways. So they give us the programming data. We put that into our model. We put the numbers for the background. We put the numbers for the combined, and we look at the results and see what the differences are in the operating characteristics. The operating characteristics are given to us in terms of levels of service. That's the basically like school grades, level of service A through F, where A is very good. F, of course, is failing in overcapacity. Generally, level of service D during peak hours is very acceptable. In many cases, level of service E is acceptable. And the reason is you want to balance operations and the convenience of the drivers, and you want to balance that with the environmental impacts of just having lanes all over the place. So we can get level of service C's and D's everywhere. In this particular case, we mostly have that anyway. But we want to balance that with what makes sense to the big picture. So when we did that, we have a couple of things here. The offsite mitigation and the site driveway operations. If you go to the next slide, Dominic. This shows us what.
Wait a minute, I just went too far.
There we go. This is what we're recommending along the site frontage, which is it's almost a half mile long, this frontage. So our recommendations are for, well, first of all, we'll have 3 driveways shown. The top one starts on the north end of the site, where the hotel is for context. And we have an unsignalized driveway located there. We're adding a left turn lane into it. The next driveway, which is going south, would be the main driveway. That would be signalized. It has a left turn lane. It has 2 lanes out, which is traditional for signals. And you'll see dashed underneath, back a number of years ago, when Shelter Ridge was approved, that was the location of their driveway. Back then, when we did this study, we wanted to make sure we were where they are, and we've maintained that location so that if they do come to fruition at some point in the future, it'll be convenient for them. The match line brings us to the lower portion, which is the driveway, the southern driveway to the site. And at that location, you'll see that we are restricting left turns out there. And we're also recommending a left turn into that location. The last intersection on the bottom right corner is the Long Hill Crossroad intersection. There, we're recommending a left turn lane onto Long Hill Crossroad. So, Dominic, if you can go back one slide. It's a little bit of chicken and egg there. So that was that's what we're expecting at the site driveways. In general, all those driveways will have good levels of service. And again, as I mentioned, we'll be adding southbound left turn lanes at each of the 3 driveways. In terms of off-site or non-site frontage mitigation, out of the intersections that we looked at, we found that there's some impacts that should be addressed at 4 of the other intersections. Well, 5, including Long Hill Crossroad, which I already talked about. So the first one, first bullet is that left turn lane onto Long Hill Crossroad off of Bridgeport Avenue southbound. The second thing was a lane use change at the intersection of Bridgeport Avenue with exit 11, aka exit 13.
Formerly known as
FKA. FKA exit 13. At that location, we did find that our traffic was diminishing the level of service there, and we're recommending a land use change there. What we found is the right turn lane onto the ramp is often starved, meaning it's underutilized, and there is a 2-lane acceptance on the other side of the intersection. So our recommendation is to make the northbound approach there a through lane and a through right turn lane, instead of as it operates today with a left turn lane, a through lane and a dedicated right turn lane. So we'll get dual use out of that right turn lane. And the third category were timing revisions. The Route 8 ramps, they operate together. So we didn't find that we're impacting both of those, but on the northbound ramps where our traffic from the south will be getting off, that left turn lane had a diminution of level of service. That could be mitigated with timing changes. Whatever timing changes we do on those ramps affects the other set of ramps, the southbound ramps. So we came up with a timing plan that works for both of those intersections, which we will be recommending to DOT. And the last one, interestingly, the Bridgeport Avenue, Commerce Drive, Old Stratford Road. We've looked at that intersection a number of times. We've had recommendations for a minor tweaking. There's a very small timing change that it takes some of the worst movements there and makes them tolerable without creating pain elsewhere. We've presented those to DOT. We're going to present them again. Thus far, they've decided not to implement them. Interestingly, from an observational standpoint, they probably go out there and look at the intersection and say, you know what, there's a lot of traffic here, there's a lot of lanes, and it's fairly efficient for the amount of traffic it serves. So they probably have made the decision that let's leave well enough alone. But again, we will be presenting them with the new timing plan there as well.
So, Mr. Sullivan, so you have recommendations from all the frontage of this particular property, all the way down to the Old Stratford Road intersections. And if state DOT, who has jurisdiction over Bridgeport Avenue, which is 714, I believe, if they were to agree to some of the recommendations, the applicant would be bearing the cost of making those.
Well, it's an
improvements.
it's an OSTA thing. So you're not going to have any development unless you comply with OSTA by posting the bond and getting the work done. And as you may be aware, as you are aware, that until that OSTA permit, when the OSTA permit is issued, if the work isn't done, the COs don't get issued. And then the developer calls the lawyer and says, I need a temporary CO, call somebody. But that's what usually happens.
The fact of the matter is,
And their traffic.
And they're not calling.
They're
all
calling.
the things that Mr. Sullivan and his company has proposed, those things are conveyed to OSTA. They come down with a ruling, and if they say, this is what's got to be done, it's going to be the applicant's done.
Right.
Yes.
And just to put it in perspective, I think the bond for Fountain Square was 1,013,114. You know what I mean? Was the bond. It's all the work that had to be done, which of course included traffic light. So yes, it is on the applicant.
And again, one of the hardest parts of my engagement many times, and in this particular case, telling my client what I think they need to do. And in this particular case, we were certain that before we submitted our recommendations that he was willing to take on the cost that's likely involved here, which is. Yes, I mentioned that we're adding the lane there. Yes.
I was just going to add, that's very helpful. Thank you. And this is very thorough. I think as a part of that, I think Bridgeport Ave does need improvements. And this would not be because of this particular development, but someone that drives Route 8 every day and then gets off on Bridgeport Ave, I would say at least twice a month, there's some sort of accident on Route 8. And because of the proximity from Route 8 to Bridgeport Ave, and that they're pretty much parallel, you then see everyone leaving Route 8, coming on Bridgeport Ave, locking up Bridgeport Ave, which then locks up our downtown Shelton. I'm not saying that's because of what is being proposed here, but just as we look at the entire environment and how easy it is to get off Route 8, come onto Bridgeport Ave, and how it seems to be happening more and more frequently. It's important, I think, to note in this discussion, and as you talk with the state and OSTA about these improvements, which are needed, that could also help for those times. And it does seem to be happening more frequently as more drivers are on the road, driver error, Route 8 is shut down, everyone's getting off, and everyone's coming through Bridgeport Ave, locking up Bridgeport Ave and downtown. And that's something that we face every day as commuters are in that traffic.
Yes, and you're not alone, obviously. I live down on the shoreline of Branford, and we deal with that particularly in the summer. And sometimes it's not even because of an accident, because everybody wanted to get to the beach. But what's interesting is that the DOT has been taking some of the parallel routes, and they could program them to make it easier for that traffic to get through. They've done it in certain sections down on Route 1, I believe, in Lower Fairfield County. I know there was a study done on Route 7 where it parallels 84. Not sure if they implemented that, But with all their cameras, they could identify these things quickly. And if it's in their closed loop system, they have an opportunity to put it into a different timing mode. Doesn't exist here, but certainly in our discussions, I could see if there's anything on the horizon to at least start studying it. Because that's the answer, really. You get that, and you want to get them through, and the quicker you get them through, the more you get back, the sooner you get back to normalcy.
I think it's worth raising in the discussion.
Are you saying they would change the timing just during those events?
Yes.
How that
Yeah,
works?
be a different program.
Automatic.
Interesting.
Yeah. And, you still get increased delays, but it just doesn't get so residual where it's back up, and they go back 5 intersections, for example.
Do it if it's so.
So that was that was it for my presentation. Of course, we're going to be bringing this to OSTA sooner rather than later to get the ball rolling. We could theoretically give it to them now that it's been accepted and the public hearing has started. So we're likely to get moving on that. And of course, they will have to be in lockstep, which they usually are with our recommendations. And typically what happens is they expand those recommendations.
What would be the time span for that?
This will be a full certificate. There's 2 processes. One is called administrative decision, which most things are these days. But if you are recommending changes such as the traffic light in this case, the lane use change over at the exit 11 ramps, things like that requires a full certificate. So it's a 3-step process instead of a 1-step process. And generally it's about a 9-month process.
That's it.
It's much faster than it was.
Yeah, I think
Much
so.
faster.
Yeah.
Do any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Sullivan? Okay, is that it, Mr. Sullivan?
That's it. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much.
And I'm sorry I have to leave, but do this all over again.
Yeah.
And
All right,
Thanks,
Attorney
Don.
Johnson, we have next.
Yeah, well, before we get to that, I just wanted to point up a couple more things and address, because I wanted to get Dave out of here.
And just, after.
you know what? Let me say one more thing, if I could.
Oh,
I brought a full size of the site frontage,
good.
so I'll leave that, so you can,
Mhm.
so. That's it. Thank you.
What I was gonna say is because of the fact that we probably will be leaving this public hearing open. If there are any members of the public during at one point, they have questions about it. These are things that you would bring back to him that would be, you cannot answer, they would.
Pretty much
Yeah.
Dave's gonna be back here the next.
Yes, and I plan on looking at or listening to everything.
Okay, can I have that mic, go Commissioner Kelly?
Okay, a couple of things I wanted to finish up before turning it over to, that'll go to Pat Rose next. And there was comments in the residents and the people they hired. There was a soil scientist, and I just wanted to let you know that obviously we do, as I mentioned, we have to go to wetlands, and it is our intention, as we did in 2016, 2017, that are to propose a stream enhancement plan, regardless of whether the DOT allows the property to be sold to us. There are, as happened a few years ago, the same thing is happening now, which is that corridor down DOT is saying, okay, sell it, and that corridor is saying, no, don't. But it's a unique situation where it doesn't impact our development. We have access to Bridgeport Avenue, and we're gonna bridge it. One of the important things that I want to refer back when I talked about LIP, if you remember that little amateurish thing I put up subdividing the property with the 2 things, those 2 factories would have access to, their access in and out would be on Long Hill Crossroads. And you would, again, as site plan approval, you would have, I can pretty much guarantee that a manufacturing facility is not gonna say, oh, we're gonna spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not over $1 million to put bridges up. They're not gonna do that, okay? Wow, your device ran into Mine just shut down.
Dominic, are you saying they would use Long Hill Crossroad because they can and it's easier?
Because they can't,
cheaper?
it's much
Yeah.
easier and it's a site plan approval.
Right.
So they would come out, and I just put two there. I mean, you could put more. I put two larger facilities and my computer is.
So maybe
Yeah.
Attorney Thomas, in the meantime, you can answer a question. So if the state decided that whatever strip of property that you're contemplating or approaching them to buy, and they deny it, it's their responsibility to maintain it.
Well, yes, but right now, based on the research that I have observed as doing the town center in Shelter Ridge and this, and looking at all the drainage that was involved, basically Wells Hollow Brook is a drainage ditch for Route 8, Bridgeport Avenue. That's what it is. So you can't count on them to go in there, even if they don't sell it to us. We can still go to rights of way.
Mhm.
And I don't think for landscaping and for enhancement, they would require a lease. You know what I mean? In other words, they do allow landscaping in their right of way.
Mhm.
So that would be the proposal. If you look, when Pat brings up and when I try to get back, I have no idea what is going on. BIOS recovery.
I just have one question. Do they have permission to bridge it? The developer has
Yes, we have to
permission to
make,
bridge
we
it.
have to go.
Yeah,
We have to go.
right.
That is the next step.
So you don't have approval yet to bridge it.
No, you can't do that. We have to do two things to get permission
You
to
need the
approve it.
project first.
No, we have to go to wetlands first. We have to go to wetlands first. Then,
You didn't go to wetlands.
No, not yet.
no, we're going, because this is a concept plan before site plan, in case this commission were to vary in some fashion the entrances. Okay? We need to know where the entrances are before we go to wetlands,
Well-
because that is part of the wetlands application.
What I'm
the
getting
zone.
at
Yeah.
is
Sure,
that
you get closer.
what I'm getting at, if you don't get permission to bridge it, would you, it's very low.
Very low.
There it is.
You got it. It's a-
If you don't get permission to bridge it, would the entrance go to Long Hill Crossroads?
We don't get permission to bridge it, the client would
The
spend
project.
an awful lot of money for nothing.
Okay, all right. Just wondering.
Because there's no way to really come into this project off of Long Hill Crossroad.
That's what I thought, but I just asked.
In the original 2018-17 plan, there was actually a road, and Pat designed it. There was actually a road that came from the top to the bottom. and It
Correct.
was grossly expensive.
Okay.
With the,
All right.
So going back up to that strip, further up on the street, we have Split Rock, right, Shelter Ridge. And there's all that grassy material and whatever. That's state right away, is that, or is that Split Rocks, you know,
what,
or Shelter Ridge?
A small portion.
Okay, and then further up the street in front of Stop and Shop, I was driving up that neck of the woods, always looked at that buffer area there, which goes down to a little gully and all that. Is that the plazas, Shelton Squares property, or is that
the
states?
right of way line
Mhm.
is a very up and down line. It depends on who bought it. So for example, a lot of the work I did in front of where Perkin-Elmer is
Mhm.
and where Split Rock is, they had actually screwed up and in the deeds, and I got involved with other lawyers resolving those deeds. So it's very interesting to look at it. I wouldn't rely on the GIS, but it's very interesting to look at how it goes. So for example, right next to this, the property line of Crown Point goes much farther out. It goes beyond the 50-foot because the developer of Crown Point, who happens to be the same developer here, bought it from the state. And at that time, they bought it. A lot of it depends on who you are dealing with. And whatever, because I don't wanna, I have no idea what's coming.
So
But anyway, I wanted to point that out. And the other thing that I can't show you now, and I'm trying to work on this, is they raised the issue of the parking count. And I think you've known, I've been before you enough times for you to know that I am an anti-asphalt person. I don't like a lot of parking. I always encourage clients to look at it. Parking is tenant driven often. But I used 4.0, and I looked at it and I did two things. I have for you an exhibit that I presented when we did Aruga. When it came in and we reduced the parking in the marketplace to 4.5. And I gave you an exhibit, a 12-page exhibit, which I can't show you right now. And yeah, if you can, I think I loaded it. All I wanted to show you is that at 4.0, and I don't care if you say 4.5, you know what I mean? We can accommodate both, but
4.0.
4.0 per thousand, I'm
Per
sorry,
thousand.
4.0 per thousand versus 4.5. You reduced it and Marketplace never had any problems. And I think some of you were on it when the presentation was done of the drone, showing the parking at 3 different times during the day and how parking in these centers flows at the time of the day, you know, and so there are we are tenant driven. There are small areas here in the front that may be able to be reserved parking and get more grass. And that's my usually goal when I do that. If you thought 4.0 was too low, you don't need, when you're doing a shared parking situation, you don't need to go to your parking regs and identify each use because you're talking about a center. And while people will drive from what did I call it? Something connected now. I apologize, the computer's, you know, I'm not even on Shelton Guest. So, anyways, on that parking issue, I just wanted to address it. The exhibit that I was referring to, and I'm not gonna go into it now, which was presented back when we were doing Arugas, was a 12-page exhibit of Shelton Square, TJ Maxx, and ShopRite. ShopRite over 12 pages of Google Earth, Google aerial, Google Earth aerials, and where you can look at the parking over 12 different shots to show how much parking was vacant during that period of time. So that is my goal with respect to the parking. And I think because of the question that Commissioner Maddow asked me about the light industrial, yes, they would go out and they would certainly not pay $1 million or more to put bridges to enter for that. So they would be met right. And
So are we ready for Mr. Rugg?
yes, we are. And I think hopefully I can be ready to even screen share and get some of the stuff up, which I'm going to try to do. You can begin talking and then.
Good evening, Patrick Rose from Rose Teasel and Company, architect for the project 35 Brentwood Avenue, Fairfield, Connecticut. If you can find the overall color site plan somewhere in there.
Yes,
Well, I'm gonna give you the 30,000 foot overview. And Danny Silva will do details of the specific sites.
Screen share.
So the property, you know, the overall property was about 17 acres. We were putting the TDD about 14 0.4 acres of that 17.4 acres. So we still got about 4.25 acres that are still gonna be the LIP. And that PDD line is at the back of a retaining wall. There's a significant grade change between Bridgeport Avenue going down into where the stream is, where Wells Hollow Brook is. And then it's going up all the way up to Long Hill Crossroads and the Sindel property to the east. So there's a significant grade change.
I see the, where it says the relocate sewer line and easement. What was that wall? Is it all the way to the back of the?
No, the wall is in front of where that sewer line is shown. It's the back of the development, basically. That's the retaining.
Is it that black line? Oh, okay.
Correct. So because there's a big grade change in there, we are having to create a plateau. We're gonna come in on the elevation of Bridgeport Avenue. We're gonna span across going uphill to a higher elevation on the other side of the brook. Then we're going back essentially at 5% to creating a pad for this development that will give us retaining walls at the back, which will span anywhere from 12 feet to 30 feet in height.
Okay, so compared to what's existing behind the Y right now, what's the perspective?
Creekwise probably 25, 28,
Okay.
you know, so it's a similar nature of height. But it varies as you come down Long Hill Crossroads, it eventually goes to 0, and then actually still a situation actually above at the corner.
Mhm.
So what we end up having to do is create a gravity retaining wall along the brook to create our parking for those pad sites. And then to the rear of the development, it will be either a rock face or a gravity retaining wall, depending on the condition of the rock.
What's gravity? I don't know what that is.
Large masonry blocks that are stacked,
Okay.
that have filter fabric that run back into the grade to hold them, keep them stable.
So they sloped or they?
They're
straight?
battered back at
Yeah.
a fairly slight angle.
Okay, so it's gravity is keeping. them-
Gravity is keeping, that's why it's called a gravity wall. Gravity is keeping.
So are you taking product out and then putting product back in? In other words, you're making it level?
We're making it relatively level,
Okay.
that plateau, because
Right.
we can slope it 5% across parking.
Yeah.
Where driveways, there can be more than that, but it has to be relatively level. But the problem is, with the challenge of the site, is that from the north end down to the south end of the site, there's a significant grade change down.
From what to what? You want Mr. Silva to take care of that when he's up?
Yeah.
Okay,
But
we'll hold on to that right now.
It's, you're up in the north end, you're at 190, and down at the south end at 160,
So you're 30 feet.
30 feet. You got 2,200 lineal feet to go 30 feet. But you're also fighting the fact that you want parking level in front of the store.
Mhm.
And you
Right,
got
right.
parking lot can only change like 5%, so you have to balance that.
Okay, regarding the aesthetics of this gravity retaining wall, is the appearance of it what they've put up so far at McDonald's, in the corner there?
I haven't seen that one. You can get different faces on the gravity retaining wall. They can be made to look like masonry blocks. They can be brick. There's all kinds of, faces that you could use.
And there's most likely some landscaping. in front
Oh,
of it,
yeah,
just
there's going to be
softening.
landscaping that we're going to be doing with the stream mitigation improvements in front of that wall, correct?
All right, that's
Right.
next.
So just to run you across what the development's going to be, going from north to south, the first building's a 4-story, 123 room Wood Springs Suite Hotel with 123 parking spaces.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it up a little bigger.
Yeah. So that is access
Yeah.
off of the most northerly bridge. Turn left into the hotel. Then to the right-hand side as you come in, there will be Texas Roadhouse Restaurant, which is about a little less than 8,000 square feet and has 152 parking spaces. Then that brings us to the center entrance to the center. And on the right-hand side of that, there's going to be a grocery facility, which is about 25,000 square feet. And adjacent to that, there's about 16,600 square foot of retail space right next to it. And servicing that, there's about 187 parking spaces.
This a particular grocery?
There is discussions with a particular grocery.
Okay. I mean, some that I know have huge demand of parking.
Yeah, that would be a concern.
Backing up just a bit, are you gonna be able to give us some elevation drawings?
I have
Are they in
renderings
here?
and
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have renderings in.
yeah,
Yes, okay.
yeah.
No, I mean of the site, these retaining
those-
walls.
It's something that you can actually, in some of the renderings, you can see where the retaining wall is behind. I haven't done one yet that shows the one along Spring because we haven't done the vacation.
I just want to.
Yeah.
So that we understand, when you're talking about the retaining wall and wanting to see the view from Bridgeport Avenue, I think is what you're talking about. Are you talking about the wall that's on the other side of Wells Hollow Brook? Or the wall that's behind the
The
buildings?
big walls.
The big wall behind the buildings?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to.
Just my thought, I don't know.
I'll actually show you,
Yeah.
you can see snippets of that on the renderings.
Mhm.
It's hard for me to picture, that's what I'm saying.
Yep. Understood. And where we have the grocer and the retail building, is probably one of the narrowest, at the end of that's probably one of the narrowest portions, because Wells Hollow Brook actually comes onto our site in that corner. And so we've got another retail building to the right of that, to the south, which is about 18,700 square feet. Chose not to connect these buildings because the site is narrow at that point, and we have to break the grade somewhere in order for us to be able to meet the entrances. So there's about 100 parking spaces for that 18,000 square foot building. That brings us to the southerly entrance, where we have a restaurant, which has a drive-through, which is about 3,600 square feet, has 48 parking spaces. These back up to Longville Crossroad, and then there's the last portion on the southernmost tip of the development is Dairy Queen with a drive-through of 2,100 square feet with 27 parking spaces. That's the 50,000 foot view of what we have for development.
Okay, what's the argument for having so many buildings? And building this all out? Why isn't the retail being used for the drive-through and the very last one and calling it a day?
Because of what you asked at the end of Dave Sullivan's presentation, which was, who's gonna pay for all the
Use the microphone.
Oh, sorry. Who is gonna pay for all the off-site improvements? It's the developer.
Mhm.
So when you look at this site and you look at the issues with it, the development with it, you have a retaining wall in the back. You have a wall that has, there is a wall in the front, correct? As you go in, I believe. There is also the issues that have to be dealt with of the bridge crossing. Which these bridge crossings, instead of, it would be less expensive to drop a culvert in things, but the wetlands does not want culverts, they want to bridge them. So all of these things are extremely expensive. So as I've often asked, or public often says, well, all the developer wants to do is make money. And honestly, I've been doing this for at least the land use portion of it for almost 40 years now. And I have never represented a developer who told me he didn't want to, or she did not want to make money. That's what they're in it for. They're doing that. The problem is that they're not in it to launder drug money. They're in it to make appropriate money and pay for the costs and the improvements and the site development. And when you're on Bridgeport Avenue, and I tell everybody that walks into my office, you have to have a conversation with the person who sat next to me, to my right, Dave Sullivan, and find out what are you gonna have to do offsite? Because you have to pay for it. And traffic light, when I was first told what a traffic light cost, I was mind boggling, and that's why. So in other words, the developer sets it up in a situation, looking at what the potential tenancies are, what the hotel is obviously not a tenancy. The hotel actually buys the property because hotels, as you're familiar with the other ones you've approved, the hotels buy it, but the rest of the other rental income needs to support the development.
Yeah, I would never dispute someone that's coming in, investing a lot of money to do something. But I just want to make sure that this is balanced.
It does have a little more green than 4 years ago. And the other thing is that the developer has allowed the situation to be that the upper area remains LIP, if that's what the commission chooses. Remember, 4 years ago, there was apartments.
Could that not be designated as open space or in some other way
That's what I
conserved?
was thinking, yeah.
Well, that's a conversation that you would have to go with the developer. I mean, right now, it could still be used for a small LIP type building. It could be used for a small self-storage facility. Those are the kind of things, because the upper area has a greater challenge than the lower area, because the upper area, you've got to work around the sewer line.
What would
So-
be the square foot of the upper area? I mean, it seems very small.
It's about 4.25 acres.
For the upper area.
Yeah, that's.
About buildable part of it.
Probably 3.5. You've got steep slopes, that goes up to.
You have a lot of
the
them,
adjacent
yeah.
property.
You can't hear.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
You've probably got, 3.5 acres is developable. You've got steep slopes going up to the adjacent property and Wamco Crossroad.
I'll just personally like to see that green and like to know that.
Yeah, it would be, to me, a better way of.
Yeah, I would too,
Between the project and the back.
because it serves as a buffer. Buffer between,
Gotta keep going.
who wanted that buffer?
I agree. You just, go on record commenting about the hotel, why you're looking specifically for a hotel on this site?
The hotel,
Okay.
actually, the representative is here,
Okay.
and there's already a contract that they're looking to come on. The hotel brand,
Microphone.
the hotel brand is Choice, part of the Choice Hotels. And in fact, just recently today, I was sent an email showing that they, what is it, JD Power, very
Yeah,
high rating in that. And there is, in this area, there was a prior developer, which I wasn't representing on this site, that was I represented the Wells family. And there was negotiating with it, and that the developer has been looking for a hotel in that location.
is Dairy Queen the only drive-through on the whole project?
No, there's two.
What's the other one?
Can't,
The Dairy Queen, and there's another restaurant that shows a drive-through, which has not been assigned to a tenant at this point. There's also a drive-through at the end of the retail building, the 18,700 square foot retail building, a small drive-through.
So there's three.
There's 3 altogether.
How about with, I can't see that.
Yeah, short to see.
So you're just proposing that third, that drive-through on the retail, just in case somebody wants it?
They have a tenant for that
Oh, they do.
specific drive-through, yes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that wouldn't necessarily propose it.
But it's not a restaurant or eatery,
It is an eatery.
that is,
Yeah.
so 3 drive-throughs.
Yeah.
Food related.
Yeah, the one restaurant that has the drive-through with the 48 spaces hasn't been assigned. Nobody's leased it or talked about leasing it yet.
People love the
Texas
drive-through.
Roadhouse, would that have a pickup area
Yeah, they have pickup spots.
such as out back?
Yes, they have pickup spots.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Rose, you got more?
Show them the architectural, so we could just
The renderings are there.
renderings are fine, just start them.
So I was just gonna mention Attorney Thomas, the representative from First Hotel is here. Do you plan to have him speak?
I did not. He would respond if you had any questions. for him. I was trying to get through our technical people first. Yes, sir. I was trying to get to our technical people first.
Okay.
So, because I know the public.
Sit closer.
Yeah.
Renderings.
You gotta make one.
It's not concerning.
So the building you see up on the screen right now is the hotel. It's 4 stories. Spring Suite, Wood Spring Suite Hotel. What we've done is put a cultured stone base, front entrance, is cultured stone, with canopy, porte cochere. And then on either ends, you've got the stairways, which are cultured stone that face the street. And then it's the ephes on the 4 stories above that, and with black windows and black metal panels, where the windows are for each of the hotel rooms. Really standard hotel layout, but it's, you know, I think it's gonna, when you see the rest of it, I think you'll see that it all fits together to some degree.
Are you going over the actual layouts later on?
I can, there, you know, the hotel is fairly straightforward, it's 123 rooms.
Mhm.
There's no large spaces, gathering spaces in it, other than, you know, lounge areas, and that's it.
So
Meet no
unlike
weekends,
Courtyard by Marriott out the street, no indoor pool,
no indoor pool,
No
no
ballroom.
meeting room, no, none of those things. It's just
strictly bedroom kind of setup.
suite type, you know, like extended stay type. That's good.
Texas.
Very nice. So we keep going. So,
Okay.
next one is the Texas Roadhouse. You can see the hotel on the left-hand side. Actually, on the right-hand side, you can actually see in part of the rendering, the gravity retaining wall above with some
Oh, yeah.
road.
Here.
Yeah,
See that on
Yep.
so it's, the height and, you know, the height of, the main roof of the building.
there?
That's quite.
Texas Roadhouse is, you know, one of their prototypes. We changed it to some degree that we put all brick on the outside. Didn't want to go with the barn board plank and, using the metal roofs, which is their pretty typical standard. It's got a patio area out front by that entrance, which is on the side. So it's, you know, everybody's seen what Texas Roadhouse is, I'm sure.
Okay.
The next one,
Groceries?
the grocer building, where we have the 25,000 square foot grocer on the right-hand side. And then on the left-hand side is the 16,000 square foot of retail space adjacent to that. Grocer, we're using a black metal colonnade that runs to protect people as they're walking out with their carts. You know, you see the inside of the store there, and on the right-hand side, you've got ephes, which are these columns, which are the same columns that we're using in the retail. So we're tying those buildings together, so it works fairly well. Gives them their identity with the wood portion. That's their identity of the tenant that's coming in. That's their identity. So we're doing that.
Posing earth tones throughout?
Yes. Right. So what you see as far as the retail, you see these ephes columns, you see the brick inlays above the windows, and you see the black awnings hung below that, and towers that offset the higher portions. They're done in metal. Go to the next slide.
Gaining one.
Yep. Go to the next slide, the retail building that's by itself, the 18,700 square retail building, is done the same motif as the retail is. So that you've got stone on, we're using a little stone on the base to protect the bottom of the columns, Ephes columns above that, and then brick in between the Ephes columns, black window mullions and black awnings, and then the black towers that offset the, some vertical breakup of the length of the building. You're also seeing this rendering on the right-hand side, the wall, the gravity stone retaining wall. And the last one, being Dairy Queen, which the face, what you're seeing here is the Dairy Queen face that's facing Bridgeport Avenue. This is their typical prototypical building that they use Ephes on most of the surfaces, except they have these metal awnings, little pop-out awnings above the windows, and then where the DQ is on the side that faces Bridgeport Avenue, that's all metal panels. So it's a different material that stands out where the signage is.
The signage is only on this particular side.
Signage is on this side, and they're showing it over the front door.
Right. Nothing around the corner. That would face the parking lot.
I do explain to the tenants that they have to go before the sign subcommittee.
Correct.
Yes, I know that. And
Their typical is only over entrance that's off of the patio and the entrance on the main entrance.
And we do appreciate that, but sometimes things slip through the cracks. And as of today,
Not everybody listens to me.
outside of the marketplace where Big Y is, say coming soon for Buffalo Wild Wings. They didn't approach us to get permission to put it up.
Not working on that side.
So, but like, we try to make sure that everybody dots their i's and crosses their t's.
So this, then
So right now, Mr. Rose, you don't have a rendering for that last little bit.
no, the last little building is Dairy Queen. The last one, the end.
The one before Dairy Queen.
Dairy-
The one
The one before Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
I don't-
We don't have a rendering.
That's the one where you're thinking, no, next one down.
The very last one says restaurant with drive-through, that's the Dairy
That's
Queen?
Dairy Queen.
But the one to the left, restaurant with drive-through, 48 spaces, that's, you don't have that yet, okay. All right, very good. Anything else?
No, I'd like to let Manny Silva go through the site.
You guys want me to sit down or you want me to stand up like I usually do?
Up to you.
Please.
That's right.
In front of a microphone.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll grab this one, right?
I don't know.
I don't know about the
I
one.
think you gotta be able
All right, can I steal your mouse though?
to, yeah.
I already did. Good evening, Manny Silva from Rose T-Zone Company, licensed civil engineer for Rose T-Zone Company at 35 Redwood Avenue, Fairfield, Connecticut, representing the applicant. Kind of to go through the overview of the site again, the site itself will have a small retaining wall along the brook here, which is going to be similar to what is at Fountain Square, which is going to be a stone-faced concrete wall. And then similar to the marketplace where Big Y is the rear wall, is how that's going to be. If we run into a good rock face, it'll probably be a natural stone face like we have done in some other projects along Bridgeport Avenue. But if that does not pan out and that's mostly soil, it will be a similar retaining wall to what's behind Big Y. We have, again, a sewer relocation here, and then this pipe here, it comes from the pump station at Beard Saw, and then it's a gravity line all the way down to the pump station to in front of Crown Point, and then we'll be relocating that a little further back. Again, just to reiterate, this line here that kind of follows the retaining wall is the limit of the PDD. So only this black line where the retaining wall is towards Bridgeport Avenue will be PDD. The rest of it will remain LIP. The site, as Pat said, what's that?
It'll remain LIP or something.
Or something, right? Yes, okay, yeah, and again, as Pat and, Attorney Thomas, illustrated or, described, there's going to be 3 bridges crossing, Bridgeport, the brook into Bridgeport Avenue. There is no access onto Long Hill Crossroads. In fact, Long Hill Crossroads will sit a little higher than the site itself, so I actually have a couple of sections going through that will show that even if there was no trees whatsoever in this upper area, which we are going to have this whole area buffered and landscaped on both the backside. But if there was no trees at all you could see from Hawks Ridge or Long Hill Crossroads would be basically the top of the roofs.
But that's not preferable.
What's that?
That would not be preferable.
Right, so that's why we're going to have landscaping and everything along and buffering along Long Hill Crossroads, so that even that you can't even see you won't be able to see the top of the roofs. The bridges themselves are conspan bridges, which are like these precast half moons that will span the brook without actually impacting the brook itself. So there'll be free flow underneath it. The footings and everything will be outside of the brook area. And what it is that we'll basically put down 2 footings at either end that have keyways in them, and then crane will drop the arch right on top of it. Won't disturb the wetlands area below. And then what we do is we fill with aggregate, just stone above that arch. And then you'll see these kind of side pieces of dark concrete with where the sidewalk and the guardrails will be. It's very similar to what was built in front of, historically it was called Madison's, which is now the Japanese, which is now the Japanese steakhouse. That's exactly the type of bridge that we're be putting in. And that's to reduce the impact to the brook itself and have free flow for any kind of animal life or the water flow through that brook. Again, as Dominic Thomas said, this is a DOT, basically a drainage area. So it's a drainage brook that comes out from underneath Walmart, actually. It comes underground out of Walmart, crosses Bridgeport Avenue, comes underground in front of Crown Point, and then comes out into the air, or into, as an open brook after right there near the Japanese steakhouse, and then it's open all the way down to Beard's Home. So the DOT could have piped this long ago without permits. They have chosen to leave it open because of there is no adjacent use to it currently. As Pat said, the site is generally slopes from the top of the page here to the brook down below. It's a very steep grade. It doesn't look it from Bridgeport Avenue, but if you actually were on site, you'd see it's a pretty good climb to get up there. And the reason why it's kind of an optical illusion is because part of it is cleared, where there was a meadow there on the right-hand side. And the meadow kind of makes you think that it's flat, but it's not really flat. In fact, Bridgeport Avenue itself, as was stated before, has a pretty good pitch going from north to south. Dives down quite a bit. So we have to create these plateaus, basically, the hotel site, and then kind of 5% between to the next site, and then 5% down, and then have a flat area for the next site, 5% down. So you're going to see that kind of steps down with the grade, with the natural grade. Can we go to let's see, the next one? I have control, so. Yeah.
They're blown up, so you have to,
Yeah.
if you want to return them to regular size.
That's fine. Okay. And then here again, we have that area that's going to remain LIP or something. I should write that. And then the area that's going to be PDD here is down there. I think
I want to clarify one thing. The PDD area does not include at this point the 50-foot state property, because I couldn't include it, obviously, in it. If the state property is sold to us, I would have to come back to amend the boundary of the PDD. But right now, all it is typical right of way. I just wanted to make sure you understood that.
So the state right away, we can, if we then acquire that property, it's just an encroachment permit on the state right of way to do the improvements that we're asking. It's not, along with that OSA certificate, the local district will review the encroachment, which means actually creating driveways onto the state property, which we were allowed to do, and they would be removed.
Well, it's Crown Point the same way, isn't it?
Correct. All the sites on Bridgeport Avenue
Right.
are all the same.
They're
We
all the
have to
same.
have, a DOT approval with an encroachment permit to access the state right of way or access the state road from our property. Now, we don't see any issue with these three, proposed bridges onto Bridgeport Avenue because Bridgeport Avenue, it doesn't have a non-access line or anything like that, so the state should allow it, along with Dave's help.
What's a non-access line?
So a non-access line is like along Route 8. You couldn't put a driveway onto Route 8 because that's a non-access line. You can't cross that with any kind of driveway, even if you own land adjacent to it. So there's non-access lines even on these state roads, say, like at Old Stratford Road, where it comes near the ramps. There's some pieces of those properties where like Split Rock is, that's a non-access line. So even if Split Rock wanted to bring a driveway close to that entrance ramp, they couldn't because you cannot cross that line. So that's what a non-access. Of course, the attorney can correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I won't even tell you what it costs the people at the convenience store and gas station that you approved. There's a non-access line, and I don't even want to tell you what it costs them for a 5-foot access.
All right, that's good. Keep going.
Okay. I know you wanted to say something. So so the parking, again, is 5% plateaus around each individual building. I'll try to go quick because I know you guys have a long night.
No, you take your time, do what you have to say. It's just
Okay, yeah.
get to the point.
And then here in front of the grocer, they actually have we have a whole striped area. That's a crosswalk. That's a different texture so that people know not to go zipping through here because there's going to be people coming out of the grocery.
The surface of the road is a different texture?
Yeah, it's going to be striped and it's going to be like a stamped texture. It's either painted. Usually it's an epoxy paint that looks like brick or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So is it a little bumpy?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. So that you know that you've gone into a different area, you better pay attention.
Has that been done?
Yeah,
Quarry
Yeah.
Walk.
Or we walk over? Okay, go ahead.
right. There's other ones.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Okay.
So again, then as we go down here, you can see here's what the gravity block wall section is. So it's like Lego blocks.
Mhm.
And then what this will have a face on it that looks, that has a stone similar to what's going on at Fountain Square. Again, we're probably gonna pour a lot of it because of the adjacency to the wetlands, just so that we reduce our impact today. Now, here's the fun stuff that you guys like to talk about. The drainage. So the drainage, again, because the site is plateaus that are coming from the back area here forward, all the areas are gonna be sloping towards Bridgeport Avenue and then be collected in various pipes and catch basins. And the drainage on this site is divided up into 3 sections. So we have area 1, which is right here, and that's gonna have its own underground gallery system with a vortex unit. So the vortex unit is going to be a part of our treatment train. So we're going to collect the water into the various catch basins with hoods in them to collect all the floatables and any kind of bottles or any oil inside the catch basin themselves. And then as the water runs down, it's going to go through a vortex unit, which is a unit that will swirl the water around, slow it down, get any suspended solids like any kind of small particles or anything that's being washed away in the water to the bottom of that unit. And again, any kind of oils and floatables will also get trapped in the top ring of it. And from there, it'll go into an underground gallery system, which is a concrete structure, basically an open bottom tank that will hold all the water in there, and it'll fill up based on the control structure that we have, which is like a wall that has a little hole in the bottom. And it'll fill up that water and it'll percolate into the ground slowly, also filtering it before it hits the groundwater. And then from the groundwater, it will work its way over to the brook area. And that will be, as you can see in the report that I submitted, you'll see that we've actually reduced substantially the water that's coming off the site from the existing conditions. So today, it's a wooded and open meadow. It generates a certain amount of flow. And with these 3 systems, we're actually going to reduce the amount of water that comes into the brook to mitigate any flooding downstream.
along this brook and the Mill River, all the way out to Houstonic River.
Has there ever been a chance that this particular brook could have overflowed like up at Seymour Great River?
It's possible. I mean, the way it had meanders, it used to be obviously flowed straight, right?
Mm.
So between all the sediments and things that are coming off the road, it's started to meander and have a little,
Okay.
couple of turns. But a good storm happens like what happened in northern Naugatuck Valley, it would wash all that material away. So if you want to talk about wetland impacts, a storm like that happened in upper Naugatuck Valley, which is about a 10-inch rainstorm that happened in 3 hours, which is unheard of, would have washed away any habitat, would have washed away any wetland thing and pushed it right downstream. So this would have been, and it's happened up in Oxford and Beacon Falls where you had kind of this brook that had some wetland habitat and trees and vegetation, and just completely gets wiped out right down to the stone. And that's the ultimate wetland impact, right? That's like taking an excavator and just scooping everything out. So one of the things we're trying to avoid is from, obviously with the regulations and everything with the best management practices that we have to do now going forward, basically the last 20 years since I've been doing this, is to try to reduce the amount of flood water that comes off of these sites, right? Before it used to just pave the sites, put in a catch basin, and put a pipe out to the nearest brook. And then that would increase the amount of water that was going into that brook. It would cause flooding, erosion. It would put oils and all kind of contamination into the adjacent brooks. So these types of sites have the best management practices where that we actually reduce the amount of water that goes into these adjacent brooks, but we also clean that water so that it's better or equal to what's there today.
Tell me a little bit about the cleanout system.
So the treatment train is going to be in the catch basins themselves. We're going to have the hoods so that all flowables get caught.
Right,
And then from there, it goes to the vortex unit.
Right, but there's time frame that's supposed to be
Correct.
cleaned out.
Right, so that we will have, and on the plans, we have a maintenance plan so that they get inspected every 6 months. And then when they have any kind of floatables that's over, or any sediment in the bottom that's over 12 inches, because the sumps are going to be 3 foot deep, right? So once it's a third of its capacity, you have to go in and vacuum them up.
What is it, like a manhole cover?
Yeah, there's a manhole cover that you have to open up, and then there's it looks like there's a truck that has like an elephant hook, truck that goes down there and it sucks everything out. So it starts with the floatables at the top, which is all the oils and grease and bottles, and then it works its way down and removes all the sediments that are at the base.
Do you have to provide to the city engineer evidence that that's being done on
Yes.
a regular basis?
Right, so the town engineer will require if this plan gets approved and goes to construction, prior to CO, he's gonna want me to file on the land records a maintenance and operation and maintenance manual, O&M manual. And that's gonna be on site with the property manager, and he has to log all his inspections, right? And then the town engineer could come around and actually make sure that he's complying with his logs, right? And if there's any complaints or any kind of thing, he'll come onto site and then say to the property manager, want to see all their maintenance logs and everything. If he's not compliant, then he can obviously give him a cease and desist. And fine.
So there's spot checks that can
Correct.
happen anytime.
Correct. Yep, and that happens with the grease interceptors. I know, I call him the grease czar in the sewer department. He goes around and samples all the laterals to make sure that, and all the grease traps to make sure that they're not that they're not at capacity. And then he'll make sure that they're getting pumped out and stuff. So again, there's 3 systems. There's one here. And then the center portion is area number 2. I'm losing the cursor. Yeah, I got it. And then here in this area, this is going to be this is partially of area number 2. This is the back end of it. And then this is area number 3. So in area number 1, we have a reduction at the 2-year storm of about 365%. So we're reducing it by 3 times. The 10-year storm is about 400%, 4 times. The 25-year storm is 129% reduction. The 50-year storm is 50%, 57% reduction. At the 100-year storm, we're reducing it by 18%. So all the way through from the 2 to the 100-year storm, which the 100-year storm is about 7 inches of rain, 7.5 or 2.
we're reducing it in area 1. Area 2, again, we have, at the 100-year storm, we have a 40% reduction. And at the 100-year storm, area 3, we have, ranges from 50%, 130 at the 25, and then 1.5% reduction at the 100-year storm. And that's because it's a smaller area. It's just these 2 end caps here that are in that drainage area. During construction, we also have to control any kind of sediment or anything coming off the site. There's a lag.
And now.
So during construction, we have to have controls on site or soil erosion controls that's mandated by the state of Connecticut. And what we'll have on this site is basically along the brook, we'll have silt fence with hay bales behind it to structurally hold up the silt fence. And that will stop any kind of sediment or mud during construction to come into the brook here, excuse me. And then we'll have a construction entrance, which is a riprap stone pad at the entrance, so that when any kind of construction truck comes off of the site, it doesn't track the mud into Bridgeport Avenue. Also, around the backside and in the catch basin areas, we'll have silt sacks so that when the basins are in place, if water goes into them, any mud or sediment will get caught in that sack. And then once the construction is completed with pavement and area stabilized landscape, we'll pull those sacks out of those units, and then it'll be a clean unit ready to go on day 1. Hopefully that's this side, and then you'll see that once it catches up, you'll see that we have the same amount of soil erosion controls on the next property, or the next, the other side of the property there. I think you're lagging. You're lagging.
Yeah.
The zoom. And then let's go to the detail. Or actually, is there a landscape plan already?
There's the landscape plan and.
Yeah, so we also have a landscape plan, which is ornamental landscaping. It's going to be on all the islands. It's going to be at least 2 trees per island with some ground cover. And then hopefully once we get reconnected with the Zoom, you can see it.
Is there a list?
Yeah, can you just put up the SP?
Mr. Silva, does it include a list of plantings?
Right, there's the list of plantings on there, and we tried to make them all native to keep the commission happy.
Don't try.
Oh, we will. I don't want.
You will.
I don't want anything
Yes.
thrown at me.
You can do it.
Oh, we will. We
We
will.
have all confidence.
We don't have any. So there's the landscaping plan, as you can see here. I have it sorted up there. Thanks, though. But keep that. You don't even get it. Oh, that's the one? Okay. She's doing such a great job, huh? She gets thrown into this. So we have ornamental landscaping in all the islands here. And then what we have is a buffer area.
Forget the Cornus Cusa right off the bat.
I know, you want the American, not the Korean.
All right, got it.
All right, but we'll go into those details. I'll promise I'll have that worked out
Okay.
for the
Next.
next
Okay.
meeting. Or the for when we do the detailed development. Oops. Scroll down. Okay, so then here you'll see that we have the arborvitae hedge that's on top of along Long Hill Crossroads. And that will actually hedge together. You see all these little dots, but they'll hedge together. We can actually use something that's a little more deer resistant, like the
Say.
yeah, right. We'll make sure we'll put that in instead. And that will hedge together and create a hedge that's about, once it's fully developed, about 40 feet.
How long does that take?
They're pretty quick. As long as we water them,
Hmm.
they grow very fast. So it's going to start like 10 feet tall.
What are you proposing for that?
I think in the alternative for arborvitae is a type of spruce tree. Can't remember, or juniper, something juniper. Right. It's similar to arborvitae, but it's a little darker green, and the deer don't like it because it's a little bitter to them. Otherwise, with the arborvitaes, they'll eat the bottoms of
Yeah.
them to make big cones at the top.
Well, maybe we could split Only because we get criticized a lot that they have no place to go and eat.
Oh,
Yeah, so we can alternate them, I
That's
guess,
wrong.
give them something to eat.
sorry.
But no, so the hedge here will start off around 10 foot high. And there'll be individual plants, but then they'll grow to about 40 at some point, usually within 5 years,
Okay.
right? So, as long as you water, they're very water dependent. They want a lot of water, but they'll grow quickly. And they'll hedge together. We can even cut them so that they hedge together like in a different shape.
Yeah.
And,
Irrigation for them?
they're gonna have drip irrigation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then that'll create like almost like a 40-foot green wall there along, okay, I'm gonna go. Hold on. So then here's how the con-span bridge will work in this section. You can see the precast section is going to be over the actual brook bed. And that doesn't impact the brook bed at all. It just flows right underneath. Again, here's our details of the silt fence. That's a silt fence that's unreinforced. That'll be on the high side. There's the silt sack detail, which is catching the sediment during construction. And then we have the snouts that go inside the catch basin themselves. And you can see how it holds the floatables and the garbage here inside the actual catch basin itself, and the water just siphons up underneath. And this is the views from Hawks Ridge. We tried our best. We don't have a plan of Hawks Ridge, so what I did is there's only 3 houses or 2 houses on Hawks Ridge that actually you can see this property on the end of Wells View, which is near retention. That was their retention pond's overgrown already. But what we did was we took one through the retail building, and you can see here that this is Long Hill Crossroads here. Their house, that building or that house would be up here. Obviously, there's a bunch of trees in here that are really tall. On the Hawks Ridge side, and then there's going to be landscaping, and I just threw the 10-foot arborvitae right there. That's the arborvitae as it goes in, today. Obviously, it'd be 4 times that height, and then you can see that the only thing they see is the top of this, right? The top of the retail. If you have the 40-foot hedge, like you guys said, or if you have this as an open space that's fully grown, then you don't see anything. Again, here's the same view, but looking at, I believe that's the Dairy Queen, right? Yeah, no, that's just a regular restaurant with the drive-thru. We don't know what it is yet. Again, you see that the view here, again, if there's nothing in the way, if we clear cut everything on Hawks Ridge and clear cut everything on our site, you're just seeing the very top of the roof. And there's Bridgeport Avenue here. And then there's that where the site across the street is going to be developed right there. So you see there's a retaining wall that's kind of shielding the property anyway. And then there's a small retaining wall here near the brook. And then this is the Dairy Queen here. Again, you're looking down Long Hill Crossroads, which is a lot of trees here. There's a retention pond here now. You're gonna look across Long Hill Crossroads, and then you would see a little more of this building. But again, that's a long way. It's over 600 feet away, and there's a lot of trees here on the Hawks Ridge site that would shield this property or shield this building. And then we'll have an arborvitae hedge here again, which will process. This is just a 10-foot version, because this is what it would be when we put it in today. But in 5 years, that would be that tall. But again, there's a lot of trees in here that there's no way they're seeing this Dairy Queen here on the end, 600 and something feet away.
Mr. Rose, have you done a lighting plan?
Yeah. So the lighting plan. We'll usually submit that with the final development plans, but it'll be 20-foot heads. There'll be a pedestal that comes up 2 feet, and then 17-foot stick. And then those will be LED blades with full shielding on all sides. And they'll be downlight, and then we'll have compliant to the regulations, which is dark sky compliant, and then no spillage outside of the property, 0-foot candles outside of the. So, again, That's my presentation. If there's any questions,
Yeah, any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Silva? Any questions for Mr. Rose? Okay. Right, anything else, Attorney Thomas, you want to present before we go to the public?
I think we
Any
could,
floor plans?
because we know it's gonna be, if you want the floor plans, we can go into that, but I think we can
No, we can
reserve
go.
that for a different time. The one thing, based on the presentation, the one thing on the presentation that was just made, that I did want to point out and go back to the fact that this is zone LIP.
Mhm.
So if you had two, not a lot, but if you had two LIP buildings, there would be no landscape, there would be no buffer.
Right.
Of it, other than the natural buffer that's there. So with that, I think, and
We
knowing
have
it's gonna
one
be.
question before we go to
Yeah.
I do want to hear from the public, but just one question on, the site plan or on the floor plans, A101 of the retail building. I'm just wondering, these tenant spaces, like these long, narrow tenant spaces, is this exactly what would be built, or would you build it to spec if you had a retail tenant come in and wanted to flex space, or it just, they all just seem very long and narrow, different retail spaces?
Yeah. What it is, Commissioner, is that you're making an assumption that you can break it down into these small spaces. That's how you develop a structural system for it. So, but what'll happen is somebody will take two retail tenant spaces, 3 retail tenant spaces, depending on their size of their store. And then those walls won't be there. It's purely showing what the smallest spaces would be.
Okay. One of the things before we go on the public portion, I just wanted to bring out, I think that it might be a good idea. Because as many times as we have driven up down Bridgeport Avenue, like we have done before to do sidewalk.
Oh, yeah.
So I would like to ask Attorney Thomas to work with staff, set that up, and come up with some feasible way. I know it's gonna be, you can look at it from the adjacent property on Bridgeport Avenue, from up on Long Hill Crossroads, from that parking lot.
And certainly we can set up anything. The concern that I always have in this situation, especially where there's concerns of the neighbors, is that all the proper procedures be followed with
Exactly.
respect to noticing, because you are actually, you don't have to notice a public hearing again, but everybody has to be aware that there is a public hearing continuation, and it is actually a public hearing that is taking place out there. And you've got to address the issue, if it's going to be a silent version, then you don't have to worry about Ms. Charbonneau taking down, or somebody taking down a transcript. If it's just going to be a viewing, it just needs to be done properly. And I ask you to coordinate with your corporation counsel. And I certainly would be willing to cooperate with it. And I venture, although I'm not going to speak for him, that Attorney McCann would be willing to cooperate in how that is accomplished
Very good.
appropriately under the law.
Absolutely. Okay, just for the record, Commissioner Parkins had to leave the meeting at 8:15, and she will watch the public portion later since it's on YouTube and recorded. Okay, so,
Where do you want the public to speak from? You want me to
Right
move?
there.
Okay, they won't move.
so we're gonna go on to the public portion. I'm gonna call names in order that they were signed up. Just to remind you, members of the public have 5 minutes to present their comments. To expedite matters, please keep in mind what a previous person has said. You are more than welcome to come up, and if all you need to do is say, I agree with the additional comments from so-and-so, that's fine. If you have something additional that's very pertinent, please say so at that time as well. So first person is Attorney Brian McCann. Yes, you won't buy.
Okay.
And just for the record as well, the policy has always been that if the applicant submits anything after tonight, the public can also comment on that. What we'll do after public has made comments, Attorney Thomas will be able to make some, yeah, not too much rebuttal, but an explanation. Okay, so go ahead, Attorney McCann, identify yourself for the record.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. My name is Brian McCann. I'm an attorney with Pullman Comley. I am a land use and municipal attorney. And tonight I represent Hawks Bridge. I have submitted a memorandum for the record. I'd ask that you kindly review that. There's a lot of information in there. I'd also like to make a short presentation, but since I've sat on commissions in the past, I'm not going to read or review my memo. I'm just going to cover a few items in the memorandum, as well as cover a few new topics and address some things. Preliminary matters. Oxbridge has also retained Michelle Ford from EcoMaps, professional wetland scientist. I believe that you have her memo. She'd like to just say a few words tonight. She's present. And they've also retained Soli Engineering, Matthew Baldino and Kevin Soli from Soli Engineering to take a look at potential traffic issues. We did not have the traffic report at the time that Soli did their review. I believe we got the traffic report yesterday. So we do expect to have an update to our traffic report based on a review of that, as well as possibly some additional testimony. So I would echo Attorney Thomas's sentiment that perhaps the public hearing could be kept open for that reason. Oh, and lastly, the neighbors or some representatives from Hawks Bridge filled out a protest petition pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 8-3B. If 20% of the property owners within 500 feet submit a protest petition, it requires a supermajority vote for a zone change. They have those. I believe they'll be submitting them shortly if they haven't already.
And that supermajority would be 4 out of the 6 votes.
Yes, I believe so.
Yes, we have run a situation in the past where we had a 3-3 vote and the motion failed to pass.
Okay. And those need to be submitted by the public hearing, so that's why I want to just mention that for the record. As I stated in my memo, Hawks Bridge is comprised of 109 units. It has a homeowners association that manage some of the common amenities like the pool and the clubhouse. It's adjacent to the subject properties. It's perched up on the other side of Long Hill Crossroad. And as was stated before, several of the residential lots essentially look down, especially toward that southern corner of the lot with the, I think where the proposed drive-throughs are sited. The residents of Hawks Bridge rely on Long Hill Crossroad for regular vehicular ingress and egress. They're very knowledgeable about that intersection with Bridgeport Avenue. I think you may even hear some stories about some potential traffic issues down at the bottom of that road. Before I go on, am I restricted to 5 minutes or something?
I'll give you some slack.
Sorry, I just have a lot of ground to cover. The Hawks Ridge residents do realize that the property is most likely suited for commercial development. I've heard some stories tonight about how they believe it's better suited for industrial or light industrial. I haven't heard that in my several meetings with the clients. However, I think their interest tonight will be primarily directed at a responsible, well-designed commercial development. And They do wish, as you could see in my memo, they do wish that traffic impacts will be mitigated, that an adequate vegetative buffer will be designed and installed, especially important between commercial and residential uses. They have a strong interest in mitigating the potential impacts to the wetlands and natural resources. And in general, just not an overload of the site. An 80 or 81% impervious area is a dense development at any rate, especially when it's situated on a lot with a wetland and a water course.
Okay, Attorney McCann, can you just pause for a minute?
Yes.
Commissioner McGee, are you with us remotely?
Yes, I am.
And I neglected to seat you once Commissioner Parkins left meeting, so you are seated in her place for the remainder of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
State law states that a zone change must be one in accord with the comprehensive plan. It must be reasonably related to the normal police powers enumerated in general statutes. The comprehensive plan typically consists of the zoning regulations themselves and the zoning map. The case law says that the requirement of a comprehensive plan is generally satisfied when the zoning authority acts with the intention of promoting the best interest of the entire community. I think it's important to note that there is an existing zoning designation for this property. As it's been said, it's light industrial. And I just think that I just want to emphasize that I think there's a reason for these burdens, these additional burdens of meeting, complying with the POCD and the comprehensive plan. You're acting in a legislative capacity, a lawmaking capacity, right? So you're theoretically acting for the best interest of the constituents, the community. And I think that's important. And I think it'll kind of be a theme with my presentation, because I think that it's important that if you have a planned development district regulation, because you're being allowed to essentially design your own zoning regulations, setbacks, impervious area, building coverage, FAR, et cetera, that you may have to meet some additional burdens, just sort of for a spot check, for lack of a better term. So I took a look at the comprehensive plan and the zoning regulations, and I noted that in the intent sections 34.1, it's to promote unique and desirable development that'll be consistent with long-range orderly development of the area, but is not accommodated by conventional zoning in that area. The uses that I've seen as proposed I would consider general commercial. So I'm not exactly sure how conventional zoning wouldn't suffice here, but I think it's important to just note the unique and desirable nature that you're requesting, that you're requiring, and an absence of conventional zoning satisfying that. In the purpose section, it states to permit tracts of land to be developed as harmonious design unit, stable character, consistent with the character of the town and the long-range improvement of the neighborhoods. And then it goes on to say when another zoning district could not appropriately be established to accomplish such purposes. On the same section 34-37, architecture shall be above average, intended to produce an aesthetic enhancement of the streetscape and a blend with neighboring buildings. It's hard for at least me to understand how an 81% coverage would accomplish an aesthetic streetscape. I also noticed as I was listening to the presentation that there was, at least in the rendering for the hotel, that there was a bed of flowers and a big greenscape in front of that building, or my review of the plan shows a parking lot in that area. So it'd be interesting to see a rendering with the parking lot in front of the building.
I also noticed that.
Yeah. And my wetland scientists even said, I think that's what makes that rendering beautiful. Certainly not the building, but that's subjective. Natural features. Development proposals shall make reasonable attempts to adapt to existing topography, natural site features, and LID or LID best practices, including native plantings. I don't see where there's been an incorporation of any LID practices. I looked up the definition. It says it emphasizes conservation and use of on-site natural features to protect water quality as a major component of LID. I didn't see that here. I've seen LID designs.
What's LID?
I believe it's low impact development. It's an acronym. But that's 34.3.8 of your PDD regulation. Informal consideration and initial development concept plans state that the applicant shall submit in writing to the planning administrator a request for preliminary staff review, accompanied by a fee to defray added costs, including experts to review the site plan and the proposal. I didn't see that here. I would opine that I think it is important here when you have such a dense site to make sure that there are not going to be problems. I didn't see circulation patterns, certainly with 3 drive-throughs. One of the things that would concern me is adequate circulation patterns. We've certainly seen evidence in certain uses. I'm from Fairfield, like Chick-fil-A, which will just back up onto the road because of the queuing lanes. Proposed vehicular and pedestrian circulation patterns, that's also contained in 34.5.2. Pedestrian walkways and other public and private paths. I didn't see an extensive detail of the pedestrian pathways. Obviously, with really big parking lots, expansive parking lots, you're going to want to make sure that pedestrians are safe. Under that same section G, proposed open areas such as parks, lawn areas, and recreational facilities. H, major tree areas, related treatment of open space areas, and screening. These are within the PDD regulations, so it seems to me like the comments that, hey, we're going to go to inland wetlands, those things will be addressed, isn't exactly accurate, at least not with the way that your regulation is drafted. And I didn't see parks or lawn areas or recreational facilities or designated major tree areas or open spaces.
Attorney McCann, I don't want to interrupt you with all due
Sure.
respect. Like with many other large developments that have come before the commission, we start with the initial concept development plan. And then we later on, if the initial concept is approved, then we move into and other things get approved, final site development plans. So that's what we look for definitely. And I appreciate you bringing
Down
all
the
those
road.
out, but I just want to make sure that
Sure.
everybody does understand this is not something that it's one and done and out the door.
I understand that. And I think that dovetails perfectly into one of my points, which is that you have a regulation which states that 34 is actually my next point. Thank you. It was dovetailed perfectly. 34.7 public hearing and decision. Approval of an initial developed concept plan shall authorize adoption of the PD district based upon the findings set forth below. I personally believe that there is a linkage between the initial development plan and the approval of a PDD. I understand that they do come back per the regulation for a final development plan approval. Completely appreciate that. But I think what's important is the way, and again, remember compliance with the comprehensive plan, compliance with the way that the regulations are written, what they've designed and what they intend are important here. And I think what they intend is that approval of a PDD is inappropriate if there isn't a sufficient and adequate initial concept plan. That's how I would read this regulation. I understand that there's a final concept plan, a final site plan that will later be submitted, and possibly further vetted, but to go and to effectively rezone this parcel as a PDD, but not know whether the circulation patterns, the open spaces are being preserved, that the wetlands and the water courses are being, any impacts are being mitigated. The way that this is written, my opinion would be that it's premature to rezone the parcel if you don't know that those things can be accomplished, since your regulations explicitly require them. Traffic circulation plans, pedestrian customer walkways. Again, I think this is that's under 34.8. Safety of intended users is a requirement. Again, I think that's especially important with the 3 drive-throughs that are proposed. Same section 34.8, the proposal will not have a significant adverse impact on surrounding properties or property values. Hawks Ridge will be looking down at a DQ grill and chill from the back decks. I think that it's there's a strong presumption that property values will be negatively impacted. And the argument about, or the discussion item about, you know, the mayor objected to the Hawks Ridge PDD development because that may potentially impact development on Bridgeport Avenue. My view is that ship has sailed. That Hawks Ridge has been approved, has been built, and if there's a regulation which requires either screening or protection of property values for adjacent residential units, then that's what the regulations state.
Excuse me,
Sure.
don't you think if they look down, don't you think if they look down at a LIP top of a factory or something, they would still have the same problem?
It's certainly possible, but I think that
I know you're stating, you know, with sidewalks and so on and so forth, but again, this is just conceptual. We haven't gotten to that yet.
Understand. Yeah, I think there is a potential that light industrial may impact those property values. I just don't think that changes the fact that these criteria are within your regulations. I've stated the law that, you know, when the court reviews a decision, that these things must be met, and I don't think that changes my analysis. And there are a lot of references. I don't know whether I should go through them, but there are a lot of references in the PDD regulation to ecological, environmental concerns.
But actually, you could go through every regulation we have. And you could go through every regulation that we have, and you could find fault with it.
Well, I would hope I couldn't. But what I'm pointing out is
just went through them and you found fault with every one of them. So,
well, to be clear, what I'm finding is, or I'm concluding, is lack of compliance with this particular plan to the regulation. I don't know that I'm necessarily finding any issue with the regulation. I think actually that the regulation is very well written. I think what I just want to impress on the commission is that the intent is not lost. I think that the intent is that the city had said when it drafted these regulations, we will allow flexibility. We think it's important to adjust for unique developments that meet the market, what the market is doing. For example, you know, we all know that the office market is tanking right now, and residential multifamily is doing really well. It's good that it allows you that flexibility. I just want to impress on you that the intent of the regulation is we'll give you that flexibility. In exchange, you must meet certain conditions.
You're saying it should be a quality development, which certainly I think everybody here would wish to have.
it should be uncontroversial. I think we should all agree that, we all could agree that a quality development, you've said above average architecture, continuity between the buildings. I didn't see that with the Dairy Queen rendering. I didn't necessarily see that with the Longhorn Steakhouse rendering, but
Well, we're
I
not done
suppose,
yet.
I suppose that's subjective,
That's what I'm saying.
and that's your purview, not mine. Same regulations, state, city streets and intersections are or will be suitable and adequate to accommodate anticipated traffic. Obviously, this is going to be a high traffic generator. I saw number 901 on peak weekends. That's a lot of traffic. And I want to impress on the commission that those potential impacts be ameliorated. And I think one way that could be accomplished, and again, this goes back to one of the goals of my client, is I think the application, even in the initial concept phase, can be reduced. I think more open spaces could potentially be created. I think those open spaces will meet the requirements in your regulation, as I've read. And I think that's something that could be accomplished, especially as it relates, again, to that southern peninsula with the 2 additional drive-throughs. And then lastly, compliance with the POCD. I didn't see a narrative on compliance with the POCD in the application. But I found a couple interesting excerpts. Executive summary states that the plan update, this is the update, I think it's 2017 update, will help protect important resources, guide appropriate development, address community needs, protect community character, and enhance the quality of life of current and future residents. That sounds like a bunch of wonderful fluff, but I think what's important is that what it doesn't say here is maximize economic, maximize the economies and the financial benefit of any particular development. And I heard a comment about, well, we need this dense development because the site preparation is really expensive. And I just don't think that is a proper consideration for the commission. Economic development analysis beginning at page 8. The city defines, and it's also, I believe, common parlance, the definition of mixed-use development is a mixture of industrial, commercial, and residential development. And I don't see a mixed-use development here. I don't see residential, I don't see industrial, I see strictly commercial. Later on in that same section, which starts on page 8 of the POCD update, it says promotion of these mixed-use style development. It mentions Bridgeport Avenue corridor, and it states these development types with the preservation of the established theme of quality and design, having appropriate restrictions and limitations on bedroom count, will result in a net positive impact on the grand list. So it evidences that your understanding of mixed use is typically a mixture of residential and commercial uses. But it also points out that there should be an emphasis on the preservation of established theme and quality and design. Section 5, updated POCD strategies, states as number 4, under protect important resources, continue to preserve and protect important natural resources. I think that's an important consideration for this site. There is a brook on this site. I don't believe it's a drainage ditch for Bridgeport Avenue. We'll hear what the professional wetland scientist has to say about the brook, but I think it is important to have a design that does protect those resources, and certainly maximizing the impervious area could be a roadblock to protecting those resources. Guide appropriate development is a goal. Same theme, continue to protect and enhance community structure, including greenways, ridgelines, rivers and streams, and other important natural features. And then lastly, on page 18, under address community needs, it states encourage green development strategies. LID would be a potential green development strategy. I do have with me Michelle Ford. I'd like to invite her up to speak, but just quickly in sum, and I think we'll have a chance for some additional comments hopefully at the next hearing. But I think the overall theme here is that there are regulations. There is law which states for good reason that it has to comply with those regulations, the comprehensive plan and the POCD. I pointed out some important elements which I think should be complied with. Hawks Ridge believes that there are some strategies that could be implemented here that could protect those natural resources, that could lead to potentially above average architecture and site design, a quality aesthetic, a quality streetscape. I think a balance could be reached here. Again, they're not, my understanding from the client, you'll hear from some that individually, but my understanding is they're aware of the fact that this is likely going to be developed with commercial development. But this is a very, very dense development. This is a lot of impervious surface. Certainly preserving that upper half would be a start. Certainly reducing some of the development and creating a few more green spaces, landscape spaces within the development itself, within the parking lots would assist. They're hoping that could be accomplished. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Attorney McCann, for coming this evening. So next we have Michelle Ford. Just identify yourself for the record, please.
Good evening, good night. This is Michelle Ford with EcoMaps LLC. I'm a registered professional soil scientist, certified wildlife biologist, professional wetland scientist, you name it. And so although my kind of area of expertise is wetlands and wildlife, and I typically present more to inland wetlands, I was retained by the client because of their concerns with some of the impact to wetlands and natural resources at the site as it pertains to the zoning regulations. And so please know that although this application is going to go to wetlands, my comments tonight are directed to you regarding planning and zoning. I believe you're in receipt of my memo. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll try to make my comments quick. But really, compliance with sections 34.3.8 and 34.8G is very important, especially in my area of expertise that says ecological and environmental concerns associated with the proposal, including impacts to wetlands, water courses, and other aspects of the environment, will be adequately addressed, right? Excuse adequately, these weren't addressed at all in the application, right? No wetland mitigation, no low impact development, no sensitivity to wetland resources. And so I have some concern with that in terms of if this gets rezoned, how are these going to be addressed, right? And so I think that the applicant could provide some more data on how they're being sensitive to these resources. Again, you have my memo. I'll kind of leave that aside, but just in hearing the attorneys speak, some things that rang true. And Attorney McCann stated, the first thing is that Wells Hollow Brook is certainly not a drainage ditch. There's a lot of life in there. There's a lot of function. There's a lot of value. Although it may accept some drainage from Bridgeport Ave and the surrounding upland, it's certainly a lot more than a drainage ditch. And even if you just go and stand at the intersection, you'll see that there's fish swimming in there. There's value as a wetland in that it provides those services as it moves downstream into the upgradient properties, right? And so with that, I see putting in 3 bridge crossings. I don't know about you, but bridges make me nervous in the sense when they overpass a perennial water course, they're a bottleneck. And as we've seen with recent rain events, we can get these kind of freak rain events, heavy flooding storms. And if that comes down to a bridge, that can be a bottleneck and help and kind of cause some more flooding and some more backup. And so with some of their designs, they showed this lovely precast bridge and they said it's going to span the brook. Well, the brook when? The brook in July during a drought? The brook in April with snowmelt? At what stage? There really wasn't a lot of data on the hydrology of the brook. So I guess what I'm asking for from the applicant and for you to request is just some more information to make sure that as you review it, this is going to function as it's being described. It all sounds lovely and it looks lovely on paper, but in reality, ecology and the environment can be pretty messy. So how is it going to be designed in such a manner to address for those kind of messy environmental situations? I think that the other thing that was somewhat concerning to me too was that just by my general calculations, there's going to be an overall loss of wetland resources, about 0.04 acres. That doesn't include anything with the crossing, but that's a wetland loss. That's gone. There's no mitigation.
Where is
proposed.
that? What are you on that?
So where it tends to, I don't have the site plan handy, but if you look where the retaining wall is going, it intersected the wetland boundary. And so they're going to be either filling it in with their retaining
This is the
wall.
one by the road.
Correct,
The
towards
initial
Bridgeport
one.
Avenue, yes. So there was a wetland loss, which again gets back to the regulations that there should be some, would that help? Yes. So, yes, right in this portion here, I believe it was, at least on the site plan that I have reviewed, I know they've submitted a subsequent one in the last week. But there was some direct wetland impact that wasn't really accounted for or discussed.
Okay, let the record show that, Ms. Ford had pointed out the area where between the third and fourth buildings where the stream, curves.
So again, just more information from the applicant to present to show how these are going to be addressed. You know, the other thing too, with Wells Hollow Brook, what is the floodplain? What does the floodplain look like? They mentioned some changes to the amount of water going to the brook and that it's actually going to be reduced through the installation of the impervious surface, which I find very interesting for how that would work. When you take a totally vegetated or formerly vegetated site where that rainwater would hit, it would go down into the ground, right, and put blacktop. I would just like to see some more data and information on how that's going to work. But also, if you reduce the amount of water going to the brook, what does that do to the brook's hydrology? How does that change, right? So where's the analysis to go into that? Also, with the infiltration basins, have perk tests been done? Do we know that those soils can infiltrate that water and at what rate? Or is it shallow to bedrock? Is it going to infiltrate, hit the bedrock, and then run out? Again, just some more data and understanding, because everything sounds really great, but let's get in the weeds a little bit more. You know, just as Attorney McCann said, and as many of the residents from Hawks Ridge will likely attest to, it's not an opposition to development. I think a lot of times wetland scientists come in and say no development. That's not my goal. My goal really here is just to make sure that you comply with the regulations and supply data that's accurate and forthcoming as it pertains, for me, to natural resources. Mentioned the bridge footings, the percolation. I think that's really all that I had. Again, it's really just asking for some more data and information for us to digest and analyze, and also to submitting that in a timely manner so that we have time to digest and review that. I know some information came in yesterday, like can't quite get to it.
There's been some discussion about the vegetation, like remediation of the non-natives and creating some kind of a more formal landscape. Now, I'm interested in that personally, but I have no experience with a brook management.
Yeah.
So I assume that's pretty technical.
It can be. It gets exciting.
I mean, you have to be someone who knows what they're doing, right? To figure out how to do that, especially on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, you have to consider too that Wells Hollow Brook is kind of in a manipulated system, right? It's existing against a road with a somewhat developed landscape. So how is that water force supposed to function and what are the goals? Is it going to be, you know, a cold water trout stream? No, it's a little too
Right.
shallow. The water quality is likely lower. But can it help to retain floodwater, right? Can the banks be stabilized so that you don't have soil erosion? Absolutely. So I think you have to look at what are the goals of that functionality of the brook and then kind of work from there. Can you get some aesthetics out of it? Absolutely. Nutrient retention. That landscaping looks great, but it doesn't look great in the drought of July without a bunch of fertilizers. So where does that fertilizer go? Right down in, right out to the brook. Oh, great, there's algae blooms, or there's stagnant water and there's mosquitoes. Like looking at all of those aspects. So,
Which is not something a lot of people can do.
No,
true.
it's a
Yeah.
specialty.
Anything else?
Nope. Do you have any questions for me?
No, it's more like presentations.
Okay, well then we're good. Thank you.
Okay, then, and let me just clarify too, I didn't ask at the start of the public hearing for any public city officials here in the city of Shelton. That I didn't, I skipped over because I didn't see anyone's name on here. Ms. Castro, was there anybody participating remotely that's an elected official? No. Okay, so we were clear. All right, so we'll go on to Val Kuhn on Wellsview Road.
Hi, I'm Val Kuhn, 172 Wellsview Road in Shelton, and I'm a Hawks Ridge resident. And as you see tonight, we have an attorney and a wetlands expert, and the community is paying for that. And it shows how important this is all to us. And it was mentioned by both Michelle Ford and our attorney, we're not looking to stop the development. We want it to be done in a way that's cohesive and aesthetically pleasing to everybody. In support of that, I have two sets of petitions to submit. The first one is the protest petitions for the homes within 500 feet. We have greater than 70% signed for that. And then the second one is just a petition in general. And again, this is the opposition for changing to a PDD. And that is for the rest of the community. And there's 140 signatures on that also.
So I will pass this along to Ms. Castro, who will put that on the website.
That's it.
Is
Thank
that
you.
it?
Yep.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
All right, next is Kim Joseph.
Good evening. My name's Kim Drosos and I live at 105 Wellsview, Shelton and Hawks Ridge community. And I'd like to address our community's concern of the traffic impact caused by continued overdevelopment of Bridgeport Avenue. My entrance to Bridgeport Avenue from my house is Long Hill Cross. And many times we sit through at least 2 light changes before we are able to even enter Bridgeport Avenue. There are many times where there are oncoming tractor trailers that are turning into Long Hill Cross as we're trying to come out, and they're turning into Honeysell, blocking the whole road so that no one can actually exit Long Hill Cross. So we really believe that Long Hill Cross is very narrow at the base. It's very difficult to get out as it is, and a lot more traffic on Bridgeport Avenue is really going to be an issue. So that's one of our really big concerns that we have. I think from the end of Long Hill Cross to Huntington, if you travel on Bridgeport Avenue, there's only 2.7 miles to get from Long Hill Cross to Huntington Turnpike or Huntington Road. And there's actually 9 lights to get there. And there are many times on Bridgeport Avenue where you stop at every single one of the lights. That's how much traffic there really is.
You're in a hurry.
Pardon?
Like you're in a hurry.
Well, maybe when you're in a hurry, but certainly it's not infrequent that you actually, if you're in rush hour, you're going to stop at every single one of the lights. And when the lights actually turn green, there's a delay in even the traffic moving, because most people are on their phones waiting for the light to turn, and then people start beeping so the person in the front could actually go, and that just adds even more traffic. So we believe that there's a significant amount of traffic already on Bridgeport Avenue, and steps really need to be taken so that either additional lanes or something needs to be done to make Bridgeport Avenue run smoother, since we're adding so much more traffic, not just from this new development, but also from the development across the street that hasn't quite happened yet. One of the things that, one of the other concerns is actually accidents. Just this week or last week, we had a car hit a motorcycle. And it's not once, we can hear from Hawks Ridge, all of the, fire engines and ambulances and everything else going on, not just from Route 8, but we can see it and we can experience it from, that's actually on Bridgeport Avenue. And there are a lot more accidents that I think people actually realize that are happening there because of the traffic. We're aware there was a traffic study for Shelter Ridge, and one of our residents, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, Brian Lawrence, spent a lot of time actually going through that traffic study. And it was something that was actually presented through the P&Z and, but one of the results of that, or the summaries of that, was basic. First of all, there was an issue with it, and that was that it assumed that the bottom of Long Hill Cross actually had 2 lanes going in both directions. And that's absolutely not the case. There's 1 in each direction. It's very narrow and windy road, and it's very difficult for the cars back way up in the mornings for people to get out. And more traffic is really going to be an issue, and especially now that we're adding construction equipment that's coming in and out right in the center of where we all have to come down and exit. And there was a near miss where a car was coming down around the bend and a truck was coming out of, or a construction truck was coming out of this Long Hill development, and there was almost an accident. So we're very concerned about that, and that's something that we're hoping, we can have some influence over addressing, specific to Long Hill Cross, because that's something that we all as a community travel on every single day. It's our way to get to Bridgeport Avenue, and the road is way too narrow. The entrance is way too small. If there's not enough lanes there, and there's not even enough for the tractor trailers that have to go into Honeysell to actually come in and make the turn. The road is totally blocked off.
By the way, the entrances, Honeysell, they're using the second entrance, aren't they, to the back? Front is they have their ground mount cellar panels. So they should be going in the second one, which is a little further off.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I haven't noticed whether there's 1 or 2 lanes. I just know that I sat at the light and actually got blocked off by the trucks more than one occasion.
Yeah.
Where we had
There's
to
2
wait.
entrances, not 2
Yeah.
lanes.
Yes. Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay. We believe that a completely new traffic impact study has to be done. Now, some of this was prepared before we knew that there was even anything that was done. But basically, the Shelter Ridge study that was actually done did say that Bridgeport Avenue should have, the summary was Bridgeport Avenue should have 2 lanes going in both directions or in this area of where Shelter Ridge and this new development would be. And it doesn't appear, there's a lot of road work going on as we go down to the bottom of Long Hill Cross, with an added light being added and telephone poles that look like they were pushed back, but certainly not enough for additional lanes on Bridgeport Avenue. So the concern is that none of it is being addressed from Shelter Ridge, but now we're just throwing yet another development on top of it and saying, oh, well, it's just a little bit more incremental traffic. But what about the incremental traffic that hasn't happened yet from Shelter Ridge? That also, the study basically said that we should have, additional lanes on Bridgeport Avenue and work done, we're hoping, on the bottom of Long Hill Cross, so that it's easier for people to get out and not so many lanes along the way. One of the other things that's on the bottom of Long Hill Cross, just to note, is that there is a greater Bridgeport bus stop right at the bottom of it. And frequently people get off the bus there and they're walking up Long Hill Cross. Now it's narrow, it's windy, it's tight for cars, never mind the tractor trailers that are coming down now, construction trucks that are coming out. people walking up and down without sidewalks there, to get to wherever it is they're going, but to catch the bus or to get off the bus and, go home to wherever they're going. So that's a consideration because it's just another complication and more, traffic issues along the way. I think, in general, we're asking for consideration in preventing the use of Long Hill Cross, a windy and narrow road for entrance of construction equipment on the site. We already have had a near miss. We think Mr. Body owns a shopping center on the other side of the property. We don't know for sure, but is that another entrance into the piece of property instead of on Long Hill Cross? 2 or 3 years or even more of construction is a long time to have construction trucks and safety issues on Long Hill Cross that we're going to be all living with, all the residents are going to be living with. If the continued trucks going in and out right in the center of Long Hill Cross and right before the windy turn where people can't really see them coming out is going to be an issue. So that's what we're interested in. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for coming tonight. Next person is Julie
Bostonak.
Bostonak.
I went from Deep Ligorio to Bostonak. It wasn't much of an upgrade. Julie Bostonak, 1 Whitetail Lane. I'm also a resident of Hawks Ridge. Before I talk about the points that I wanted to discuss, I did want to urge the commission to please consider the letters from the Conservation Commission. One is dated July 17th of this year, and one is dated August 14th. Those are both from Thomas Harbinson.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, so I just wanted to bring that to the attention please review those. My concerns mainly are related to children. Some of what I'm gonna say may sound redundant to what my neighbor was discussing, but my concerns are related to children. I'm the mother of school-age children. They take the bus right at the entrance of Wellsview and Long Hill Crossroads. When you are coming down Long Hill Crossroads from Long Hill Road, you can't see that a bus is stopped until you crest that hill at the upper entrance to Hawks Ridge. If you are coming up Long Hill Crossroads from Bridgeport Avenue, you can't see that a bus is stopped until you reach that corner. I don't know how many of you or how often you travel Long Hill Crossroads, but it is narrow, it is windy, it is hilly, and people speed down it, they fly down it. When you add into the mix a low-cost, long-term extended stay hotel, there's likely going to be a lot more traffic on Long Hill Crossroads. And the traffic study that I listened to didn't seem to take into account at all any traffic on Long Hill Crossroads. I don't want that oversight to mean my child is injured getting on or off the school bus. I don't want that oversight to mean any of my neighbor's children get hurt getting on and off the school bus. That to me is not a casualty, and it's not to be taken casually. The entrance and exit at the curb cut, I know that Attorney Thomas mentioned that if some manufacturing facility goes in at the top, that, oh, the entrance can be right on Long Hill Crossroads. That's not a safe place. Maybe for people entering or exiting that specific driveway, but people coming down Long Hill Crossroads or coming up, you can't see until you're there. And if you have a slow-moving vehicle with a lot of mass and a fast-moving smaller vehicle, that's going to be an ugly impact. there's really no way to enforce, speed on that road. So you have people doing whatever they want. There's no sidewalks. So kids that may further up the road have to take the bus, not Hawks Ridge residents, but further up. School buses that stop at the daycare centers. There are two daycare centers on there. So all of these increased traffic concerns, Long Hill Crossroads is already a cut through. When you add in 3 more restaurants, retail space, a grocery store, and a long-term, low-cost, extended stay hotel, there's going to be a lot more traffic. That's how people get to the Merritt Parkway. They go up Long Hill Crossroads, down Long Hill Avenue, and over that way. So these concerns, I'm asking you to please take into consideration. I want the children in these residential areas to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming out tonight. Next is Chris Douglas.
DOUGLAS, 1S.
That one I got.
You got that, huh?
You're lucky. You get the guy who talks the most, the last.
No, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people after you.
I will be brief. Longtime Shelton guy,
Identify yourself for the record and address.
39 Hawks Ridge Drive. And again, it's CHR, I guess. Some folks ask how to spell my first name. Longtime Shelton guy. Lived my entire life in Shelton. I've seen Shelton grow. I've grown with Shelton. Shelton has grown with me. I've seen responsible development. I've had a marvelous career helping responsible developers develop responsibly. This is irresponsible. We moved quickly on this because of the egregious, aggressive, disrespectful manner in which that property was cleared. That property was cleared faster than the Germans blitzkrieg Europe. Okay, and trees were removed. He has every right to remove trees. Stumps were removed. That, my understanding, is a violation. We talked earlier, Manny talked earlier about mud control. None of that was done when this property was cleared. So we felt the need to move quickly on this. We are not here asking for this development to be shut down, to be stopped. We're here asking it to be more reasonable, to be better thought through, to be more practical, to be better for the city, to be better for the residents that surround the development. So contrary to what my good friend Dominic, and he is my friend, I'm not being snarky, said, we're not interested in having this remain a light industrial zone. We recognize, in fact, I stood before our community and I said, this property has the right, the developer has the right to develop this property. What we want is we want it to be made better. Okay? The aggressive nature startled us, so we moved quickly. When we're here talking about approval of a PDD, this letter went on August 10th, went to many residents in the neighborhood. Dear resident, drilling and blasting will begin shortly for a new shopping center and hotel on Bridgeport Avenue and Long Hill Crossroads. The town of Shelton requires that all homes and businesses within 500 feet of the blasting be notified of this activity. There is no action required on your part. This is to satisfy the notification requirement. Be assured that the excavation will be performed by licensed contractors and the possibility of damage occurring to your residents is near zero as the process is heavily regulated. The blasting company will be, and I won't say who that is, but this is unbelievable. The hubris.
Mr. Douglas, could you identify the sender, what's on the letter there?
The Hartford Structural Inspections LLC, 59 Woodford Road, Scarsdale, New York, sent this letter to multiple Hawks Ridge residents and likely other residents in the surrounding community. So this is egregious. This is hubris. And quite frankly, it's disgusting.
I think so.
And so when we get things like this, we have to act quickly. We have to. Because we can't let this go. So I think what we're asking for is just some reasonableness with this development. We're asking the developer to listen. There are 6 major concerns. They're in the public record. All right, so we don't have to go through them all. One thing I want to mention about the buffer is that we also want that buffer to limit or to prevent foot traffic. We're not interested with folks going to eat a bad steak coming across Long Hill Crossroads or from Dairy Queen, walking from that property up Long Hill Road. We have it now. There's a bus stop at the bottom of the hill. They come up Long Hill Crossroads. And quite frankly, it's dangerous. We don't want folks from an extended stay hotel walking across and coming up Long Hill Crossroads. We want there to be a buffer to also foot traffic along Long Hill Crossroad. So again, our concerns are documented. They're in the record. Okay. And so I encourage everybody to go look at those concerns. I also encourage everybody to take a drive on Long Hill Crossroad over the weekend, tomorrow, Friday. Go up, go down, take a look at what's been done without any regard, any respect. Take a look at what's been done to that property and to the neighbors. I had to wait last week, probably 15 to 20 minutes for an oversized load truck to be delivered into that piece of property. Okay, a big crane. It's there. You go see it. We have drone pictures. I have drone pictures of the property. We've seen pictures of it get leveled. Okay, and again, it's his right to develop the property. We're not trying to stop that. We just want reasonableness here. We want development I want that development to be what the development in Shelton used to be. Practical, responsible, well thought through, not egregious. It's hard to deny that the White Hill Shopping Plaza, for example, is not a good development. It is, or what Mr. Cinto did on Commerce Drive and Research Drive. It's wonderful development, right? Benefited the city, was done with respect. Okay, we're not talking about the Starbucks drive-through here. Okay, we'll worry about that later. So I think what all the hits that's been said here tonight, I think a lot of good stuff has been said. I think we've sort of made our case. I've heard a little bit of happy talk about you're not going to be able to see the rooftops because of trees. We do live in New England. Leaves fall off of trees. Okay, winters come here and you can see through the trees. Things like that, that's happy talk to me. I dismiss that. This has to be well thought through. Okay, and we're going to be watching every step of the way. Going to make sure that it is, and we're open to sitting down and talking about it. That's all. And so I yield my time, and I hope that we can make some progress here.
I have no time left.
Thank you. Thanks for stopping.
I gave you a minute and almost 2 minutes. Yeah, sure. Do that in the record. This is not like Congress, This is better. All right, next one is Mike Fidel.
I was going to talk. I'm the president of the HOA at Hawks Ridge.
Sir, you have to identify yourself for the record and everything, otherwise our stenographers and everybody get all upset.
My name is Mike Fidel, 36 Hawks Ridge Drive. I came to one of your meetings in August and I was impressed by the volunteers and the staff, the way you do things here in Shelton. I asked my community to show up.
Good night.
There's only 8 people here in the audience that night. But I asked the community to come here and have respect for the commission, which I acknowledged. And I think we're in good hands. I think you people are going to listen to what was said tonight and come to the right conclusion. As Chris Douglas just said, we're looking to be reasonable. We're looking to be respectful. We just want it back towards us the same way. We haven't felt that yet. But that's all I really wanted to say.
Okay, thank you very much.
And can I say one thing to the audience? I want to thank everybody from Hawks Ridge and Sally's Way that came tonight. Thank you.
All right, next person, Chris Douglas. He signed them twice. Son of a gun. Try to slip through there, huh? Yeah, there's that old saying, what, once is not enough?
You wanted extra minutes.
All right, is there a Jill Douglas? I'll talk to Chris. Somebody's playing games. All right, next person, Sandra White.
Did you know?
Sandra White, 480 Long Hill Avenue, Shelton. I've been a resident for Shelton for 80+ years. Recently I was walking down the sidewalk across from my home and I noticed several surveyor stakes. So I knew something was up. They need some kind of zoning change, but I wasn't clear on what the zoning would be. But Mr. Thomas said they have to move the sewer line and they were going to build a wall back there. It's a residential area.
How close are you? You're on Long Hill Avenue?
I'm on Long Hill Avenue. This is
Right.
directly across the street from, directly. Where he's talking about building a wall and moving that sewer line.
I'll have to look into that because I'm
Yeah.
getting the impression that you are on Long Hill Avenue up by the Jehovah's Witnesses.
I'm in
Building.
between Jehovah and along the crossroads.
Okay.
But this was directly across and it's wetlands.
Mhm.
And it wasn't clear to me even after tonight why they have to move the sewer line. They're moving the sewer line on Long Hill Avenue. It's going to create a problem for the people that live there with the traffic. It's wetlands. There's homes on both sides of it. They're not supposed to build there. The factories are on Forest Parkway. They keep encroaching closer and closer to Long Hill. There's a very small buffer zone, and now they want to take that buffer zone away. But it's not clear to me what they're trying to do there. They must have plans, because there have to be 13, 14 different surveyor stakes all through the thing.
Okay.
And, you know, I think it's about time that you give thoughts to the residents who long time here and stop making zoning changes. They need a zoning change in order to do this. I like Hawk Ridge better. But I just needed to say my piece. Why are they doing that? Are they going to put the factories onto Long Hill? I mean, it's got to be from here to maybe that back wall. That's the small buffer zone. It's not very large.
Okay.
But that was
That's it, Mrs. White?
That was it.
Okay. Thank you. Next person, last person on the list is George Sender.
Name is George Sender, 15 Longview Road. I'm not in the same area that Sandra is at, but it's also residential. And it's also an encroachment on the wetlands there. There's an awful lot of wetlands all along Long Hill Avenue. To the point where there is one section where there's 4 houses being built on a filled-in area. And that's been back and forth to you people any number of times. I watched that thing go from a request for 8 houses, to the 4 that's being there now. But it's still all wetlands. And it's the same type of thing that they're talking about going on Bridgeport Avenue. And I guess what I'm really saying is that you people have a heck of a job. And I really think that it's unfortunate that the economic development plan for Bridgeport Avenue did not start with widening the road. I mean, I've been here
6 years.
Do you remember Zach's Drive-In?
Okay.
Is now Wells, or is now Webster Bay. 8 acres is now Subway and nail salon,
Mhm.
okay? So I've been here a few years. And I think that Bridgeport Avenue right now is just a horror show. And I think before you consider moving ahead with any development, whether it be the one on the crossroads or the one that's proposed for across the road from that, and any further development on Bridgeport Avenue, it really, I don't know if you can do it, but I think it should stop until something is done with the roadway. And the next thing that I think you people need to do is, and I know it's part of your job, is to look at the wetlands and all the encroachments that had taken place and where we're at on River Road and the developments there. We need to do something with it, and it's your job, and I envy you. I need to be able to do that. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Sender.
Thank you.
I'll just ask, is there anyone else in the audience before we do have to check if there's anybody participating by Zoom? Okay, Ms. Castro, there is, come on up. Sure. And I'm just gonna give a heads up to the people who may be participating via Zoom or by phone, that I'm gonna ask you to dial *9. If you're using a phone or use Zoom's raise your hand feature.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cheryl McMahon. I am on 41 Brewster Lane. So definitely not over on Long Hill Crossroads, but I do work up on Corporate Drive. So that area is my cut through. So I know all too well about mitigating the traffic to get to work. So a traffic study, I definitely agree with, needs to be done. It is a challenge getting through that area. I know when we had the car wreck on Route 8 and then the tractor trailer that rolled over on 95, I was in traffic for an hour. I'm 5 minutes away. And never mind what, Long Hill Crossroads and Long Hill are enduring with the traffic that's now cutting through, because I avoid Bridgeport Ave like the plague. So definitely a traffic study, but alongside of that and looking at the aspects that are affecting the wetlands, I would say that we probably also need a wastewater treatment study in place as far as what kind of waste is going there. Because in my personal opinion, I don't think our facility is up to snuff to begin with. And as we're going into all of these developments that we're being requested to review, I think that also needs to be a consideration. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want to be floating in it, and I'm very close to the facility. So, but that is all. Thank you.
All right, cool. If there's anyone participating remotely that would like to address the commission on this particular agenda item, please use Zoom's raise your hand feature or dial *9.
I have added in George Friend.
Okay, it's a Zoom.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can. Go ahead, identify yourself for the record, please.
Yes, my name is George Friend. That's Friend.
Okay.
2 Daybreak Lane in Shelton, Connecticut. I have a lot to cover, but it's already been covered, so I won't waste everybody's time on that. The ecological expert, I can't remember the gentle lady's name, talked about the stormwater runoff. I also found it amusing that the stormwater runoff study asserts that they're going to reduce the amount of runoff. I find that hard to believe. If you cover most of the 15 acres with asphalt, I think even with that slope, the natural ground would absorb a significant amount of water. The collection system is just going to concentrate and increase the runoff, and that's important, because if you follow the Wells Brook, I guess you call it, it flows under Long Hill Crossroad. It flows between, I believe, Honeysell, Wells Hollow Farm, and the Brightview Senior Living Facility. It empties out into a sort of like a little collection pool along the side of Beard Sawmill Road. And I've seen that flood many a time, just, the way it is. I can just imagine what's going to happen if they increase the runoff off that site. And that's a heavily traveled road these days, Beard Sawmill Road, with all the development there with the apartments and the assisted, the elderly living facility, I guess we'll call it that. So I have concerns there about flooding of that road. Also, I would ask you to closely review that traffic report that was submitted. Specifically the Old Stratford Road at Route 8 northbound ramp exit 9, especially with the westbound through traffic. I mean, with this development, the level of service degrades from a C to a D, and that's already a problem over there. We get traffic backing up on Old Stratford Road at that light to the point where cars going, I guess it would be eastbound on Old Stratford Road, can't turn into Farmell Crossing because, people are blocking the intersection. So I think you got to look at Bridgeport Ave as a river and all these side roads as tributaries. And there's really no assessment of what happens to the tributaries. And I think that's where you're going to have problems. I'm also curious as to why the property owner clear cut the vast majority of the property prior to even presenting this application for PDD. But personally, I would prefer to see it zoned as light industrial. I think we're better off encouraging manufacturing to move into town. And that's about it. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Friend. Is there anyone else participating remotely? Ms. Castro?
No one showing.
Okay, last call. If there's anyone participating remotely, please use Zoom's raise your hand feature or dial *9 on your phone if you'd like to address the commission.
Showing.
Okay, so we'll move on. Frank Thomas, do you want to do some commenting? Sure.
We kept open. I'd like to sort of begin at the end a little bit. I'll begin with the blasting letter. When I met with Attorney McCann and the representatives from Hawks Ridge, they showed me the letter. I was aware of it. I immediately went to my client. And he had discussed and gone out to bid with certain blasters, and one of the blasters obviously contacted a company that does the pre-blast surveys. Now, where the miscommunication was, I have no idea, but I immediately know them that it was nothing. There's no blasting that can be done until the project is approved, and it has to go through the fire marshal. So I wanted to.
So are you saying that the letter was not authorized to be sent?
Not authorized.
Right. Okay.
Again, it didn't come from the client. It came from blasting company that we had talked to.
Right.
And contacted these people. Where the miscommunication was, I don't know. Somebody mentioned walking from the restaurant. There is, the restaurants the plan calls for and would have to build a hedge along that road. Obviously, I don't think anybody, somebody could walk out onto Bridgeport Avenue, walk around and walk up along Hill Crossroads. You can't stop them, but no one's going to be, unless you want to climb a small retaining wall and walk through a hedge, you're not going to be invited to go out there. As far as the sewer and the sewer capacity, I'll use that to address this. When clients come into you for an initial concept to go forward with a project, there is a little bit of Mohegan Sun in it. And I explained this to the client because there are other levels they have to go through. And in this case here, and this was an issue back in 2017 because the question was asked about wetlands, and there was an opinion rendered by Attorney Seuss, the Assistant Corporation Counsel, that you have to go to wetlands simultaneously with or prior to the filing of your final site development plans. You can, in certain circumstances, go to wetlands before you come in. Back in the old days, since I have enough white hair to really be in the old days, the Wetlands Commission used to take conceptual discussion, and then they cut that out. In other words, you would go in and have a conceptual discussion with them, because wetlands commissions do not approve developments. They don't approve buildings, they don't approve anything. All they do is give you a permit to have an activity in a regulated area. So that's what you need to, that's what you go to them for. So when you have a site plan where you're not 100% sure what the concept plan is going to have with respect, in this case, to the wetlands crossings, then you need to get that answer first before you go to wetlands. But it's a risk for the developer, because as the wonderful expert that they've hired, there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed here. And wetlands could shut it down in a minute. And they could deny certain things, or they could end off making decisions that cause us to come back to you. In 2017, there was a plan developed for a stream reconstruction. And I will say this, the reason I called it a drainage ditch is because in the studies for Shelter Ridge, and even back then, the point was that the drainage went out of the state drainage system into Wells Hollow Brook with no BMPs, no best management practices. The state doesn't engage in that because in most instances, because it costs money. So they don't upgrade the systems. So that is the reference to that. The proposal was to enhance it. We are enhancing it on state property unless they allow us to purchase it, which I have made application. I have filled out the form. It's up at rights of way. I have an assigned a property agent, and I'm going back and forth with it. And he's going through all the various steps. If we get it, then we have more control. If we don't get it, we're still going to propose the same thing. We're still going to go through wetlands. We got to get permission of right of way. And I don't want to sound overconfident, but in a situation like this, most likely right of way would agree to an enhancement that does not in any way impact any needs that they have with respect to this area. I will also tell you, not to excuse the state, that one of the reasons they, I don't know whether they haven't done anything or they would have done anything, is for the longest time, the state had a lot of concern of where the right-of-way line was along this 3/4 of a mile stretch. And they eventually, I guess in the last 7 years, found out where the right-of-way is. But we have to go to wetlands, and wetlands can make changes, and wetlands could shut us down. And we are going to address all those concerns. And we have the people that are working on it right now. With respect to what Attorney McCann brought up about all the items in your regulation, very brief history. Prior to 2006, the zone change took place at the end of the detailed development plans. For all the years you had this. In 2006, that area, the Campion case, had gone up to the appellate court and was on its way, or was being decided by the Supreme Court. At that point, at the behest of Tony Panico, at the behest of John Welsh, the late John Welsh, that you embarked, you meaning the Planning and Zoning Commission, embarked upon a rewrite of it. And in the rewrite, with all the advice and all the legal advice that you got at that point, I had some input into it with discussion. The Plan Development District was determined to be placed on the zone at the end of, could be placed at the, I'm not could be placed, was placed on at the end of the approval of the concept plans. The requirements that were cited, all those standards that were put in at that time and were discussed a lot back at that point, were not mandatory. You had to have this. You didn't have to have open space. It's just that these were the things that these were a lot of the factors that you looked at. And I will tell you this, there was an interesting discussion and a rewrite of that portion that dealt with wetlands and environmental, because the first version turned this commission into a wetlands commission. And I pointed that out. They saw help of John Welsh, you know what I mean? And John Welsh said, yeah, you've got to, you know, you can rely on the Wetlands Commission. You can ask the Wetlands Enforcement Officer, the Wetlands Commission, we want a report. And you're going to get a report that's coming back. And that report could be such that it impacts the development, and we have to come back to you to amend the concept. That is the way it's worked. When you look at all the things that are checked off, all I ask you to do is look at what you have approved or has been approved along Bridgeport Avenue in the way of commercial, you know, some of them have areas of open space. Some, like the marketplace, have none. So it depends on the development, and the advantage of the PDD, which, by the way, your PDD, as a result of the Shelter Ridge application and the appeal, was sustained by the Connecticut Supreme Court in Tillman versus the Shelton Planning and Zoning Commission. And they looked at it and they approved it the way your language was written, and the fact that you were what we call an 8-2 or zoning, your authority derived from statutory zoning, not from a special act. So that's been done, but those regulations that are in there, those listing things are things we have to comply with. And we are, in this case, we are not going to turn you into a wetlands commission. We try to address the things we're going to do. But you've got to keep in mind in this, the unique thing about this is that the majority of the regulated area that's a water course, 85% of it, at least that's what I was told by my engineers and everything, is not on our property. But we are going to have to address it anyway. And we know that, and we will address it before the Wetlands Commission. On the issue of traffic, the only thing I'm going to say, there's something very interesting, karma, whatever you want to talk about. As somebody made a comment that they were criticizing the Shelter Ridge traffic report. And the Shelter Ridge traffic report did call for 4 or 5 lanes. Shelter Ridge is in litigation. It's never made it through OSTA. The Shelter Ridge traffic report, I happen to be this lawyer on both sides of the road. The Shelter Ridge traffic report is a 900-page detailed report done by Solely Engineering. It was peer reviewed by then known as Malona McBroom, one David Sullivan. In this case, traffic report is done by now SLR, the engineering firm formerly known as Malona McBroom, one David Sullivan, and is being peer reviewed by Kevin Soley. So I can assure you this, that both of them have a very substantial knowledge of what occurs on Bridgeport Avenue at that location, because they are the ones who peer reviewed each other in both of these situations and wrote the reports. I will say that if I was listening to Dave correctly, he did address the traffic on the crossroads and that intersection. That was one of the intersections checked. You know, as you know, they talked about truck traffic and everything like that. It's a light industrial zone. While the trucks that come in and out, I don't know why any truck that was delivering to the grocery store or to the grocer that's proposed.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why any truck in there or to the restaurant or to the hotel would go out and have any reason whatsoever to go up Long Hill Crossroads. Because they would normally, especially if you're talking a large truck, those trucks would come out and they would go either, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to the old numbers. They would go either to exit 12 or exit 13. I think whatever they are known as
Are
now.
they talking about during construction though? That
During construction, we can't do anything about that. You can't wait. You can't wait for OSTA, which could take months and years to start your construction. It doesn't work. They
right, but I'm
certainly,
saying that's
yeah.
what this.
I understand the
concern
thing,
that's been
but
expressed.
also with respect to the issue of traffic, there is a time period. And the client will have to work, the client will have to work with whatever you permit, but that's the access that has to take place. We can't cross there, yeah, until we go to wetlands, but what I'm talking about is the traffic that comes out. Yes, there will be people that will use the center that will go on Long Hill Crossroads, but as far as the truck traffic, it's not gonna go there. But there is existing truck traffic. It's a light industrial, that whole road. At some point in the past, the commission chose to zone it LIP and IA2 all the way up. So there is truck traffic that comes down Long Hill Crossroads. And Honeysell has certainly predated Hawks Ridge. You know, it's been there for quite a long time. So, you know, again, Dave did talk about the fact that there would be an expansion of the intersection. He even, and I don't know whether he said it in my discussion with him, that the actual pavement is wide enough to create the 3 lanes at Long Hill Crossroads.
It's part of the traffic report.
I think
The diagrams are in there.
yeah, the diagrams are in there. Very often that somebody brought up the issue of, well, first of all, there was brought up the issue of like pedestrian circulation. There is pedestrian circulation. There's crosswalks. As a matter of fact, Manny Silver brought up and the chairman questioned the issue of what to do in front of a grocery store. That is an issue that all developments occur with because people have to park and walk across to go into the grocery store. And he referred to other ones. I'm more familiar with what they call traffic calming steps that are taken in like Quarry Walk, where they have pavers in certain areas that actually create the crosswalking. And in addition to that, this commission has required or requested in some developments where you have the moderately sloped crosswalks, which serve as a traffic calming device and as a safety device. So these are things that certainly we're willing to talk about. That's why we're in the concept plan. As far as property values go, the property values, I don't think this type of a development that provides services to people is gonna, and there's no proof of that. I mean, you'd have to have appraisers or whatever to go in there, but certainly the impact of property values, if you wanted to impact, it would be a lot greater if you had 2 light industrial buildings with trucks going in and out. But that is what is a matter of right along there. However, because this is a PDD, you have more discretion to put more protections on it. And I guess, lastly, I'll conclude, and I don't know if I tried to get everything, but I guess I made a mistake by reducing the size of the PDD. Because if I left it the same, we'd have this all open space on the top, you know what I mean? And say, oh, that was all green. But what I did, if you read the statement of uses and standards, and you look at the coverage items in it, building coverage, impervious coverage, the numbers that are in the statement of uses and standards correspond closely to the numbers of the LIP zone, the underlying zone. I made sure there was not, more than a 5% discrepancy with those numbers, because I tried to keep it the same, even when we went down to the 13 acres. Obviously, the numbers looked a lot better when you use the full thing. And certainly, I will have a discussion with my client about the issue that was raised about what to do with the top. I will tell you that one of the reasons I changed it is the client had expressed to me the intention on keeping the house at 48. And I explained to him, well, to do that, I've got to take it out of the PDD, first of all. And then I've got to go back to the commission if your thing is approved and do a simple lot line revision, because it's a pre-existing legal non-conforming parcel. So I've got to match the same square footage. So I will talk to him about, what you brought up, and that's why it's going to be kept open. But the thought that it doesn't have any greenery in it, I think is belied by the fact of if you look at the greened up area, plus the fact that as an entire piece of land, we have now set the top area off and kept it in LIP, which has in the past, by this commission and by members of the public, expressed concern when you have a large empty space in the PDD, those uses that you approve can be put into that empty space. And so I thought it was more conservative to do it and keep it the way it was. Not that you're gonna have an LIP building there, but at least not to put the multiple uses that you have in the PDD. So again, I know there was a lot of other questions, and mentions made of snow melt and everything like that, and the drainage. I let Manny, I stand by Manny's drainage report, and I stand by the traffic report. There were several people that said there needs to be a traffic report done. It was done. And I'm sure it will be peer reviewed by Kevin Soley. There's one good peer review 7 years ago deserves another. But with that, I will hope again that you keep the hearing open and we can address, go for it. And even during this period of time, I will, Attorney McGann has been good to send me his stuff. I'll send him his stuff. And we'll continue to talk.
Very good. Good. All right, is there a motion to continue or close the public hearing?
To continue the public hearing.
Motion to continue from Commissioner Ticky, seconded by Commissioner Kelly. And on the motion to continue, Commissioner McGee,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Motto. Aye. Commissioner Cristiano,
Aye.
Commissioner Ticky.
Aye.
And chair votes aye, motion to continue has passed by a vote of 6-0. So the continuation of this public hearing will be on the agenda of an upcoming meeting. The public will be able to present comments on any new material submitted by the applicant after this evening. And seeing that there's no other agenda item, the chair declares this meeting is adjourned as of 9:50 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Good night. That was zoning 101.
Thank you all for hearing us.